Good morning and welcome to the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public hearing and public meeting of December 19th, 2023. We'll begin this morning by taking attendance, and I'll ask our General Counsel, Mark Silverman, to call the roll.
Chair Carroll.
Here.
Vice Chair Bland. Here. Commissioner Chapin. Here. Commissioner Chen. Commissioner Chu. Here. Commissioner Ginsburg. Here. Commissioner Goldblum. Commissioner Jefferson. Commissioner Lutfi.
Here.
Commissioner Master.
Here.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
All right. Good morning again. Welcome again to the December 19th public hearing and public meeting. This public hearing is being held in our public hearing room at 1 Center Street on the 9th floor. It is also being held via Zoom live on our YouTube channel. If you would like to watch the proceedings, we are going to begin this morning with an agenda by our research department, including 2 proposed designations that are scheduled for our discussion and vote, and 1 item being proposed to be calendared. And then we will move to our preservation department public meeting agenda, which is for 2 items that were previously read into the record. So we will be not presented. So we will be opening those 2 up, opening a hearing for those 2 items and taking the applicant's presentation and listening to public testimony. And then we'll move to our public hearing agenda to review new applications for work on designated properties. So with that, I will turn it over to Kate McHale, our Director of Research.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning. Item number 1 is LP 2675, Barkin, Levin Company Office Pavilion, 1212 33rd Avenue in Queens, Block 522, Lot 29 in part. Item proposed for designation as a single-story commercial building built in the mid-20th century modern style by architect Ulrich Franzen in 1957 to 58. And presenting is Matt Postal.
Good morning. The Barkin, Levin Company Office Pavilion is a distinguished example of mid-20th century modern architecture designed by Ulrich Franzen. Of particular interest is the pavilion's unusual structural system: 9 concrete pillars that support umbrella-like ceiling vaults that project beyond glass walls, shading the brick paths and interiors. At the public hearing on November 28th, 2023, 4 people spoke in support of the proposed designation, including representatives of the owner, Docomomo U.S. Tri-State, the Historic Districts Council, and the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The commission also received 1 written submission in favor of designation from Queens Modern. There were no speakers or written submissions opposed to designation. Ulrich Franzen designed the pavilion as part of a coat factory. Born in Düsseldorf, Germany, he immigrated to the United States in 1936. Franzen attended Williams College and the Harvard Graduate School of Design, where his classmates included I.M. Pei, Victor Lundy, and Paul Rudolph. Following graduation, he worked with Pei for 5 years, establishing his own architectural firm in 1955. He received the Barkin Levin Commission in 1956 and filed for a building permit in early 1957. The complex was completed in September 1958. Ooh. Barkin Levin, a successful New York City manufacturer of women's coats, was founded by Dan W. Barkin, David Barkin, and William Prockheimer in 1926. Under the trademark Lassie Maid, the company produced various women's misses and small women's coats. With a showroom in Manhattan's Midtown Garment District, the new Queens factory was conceived as the first major plant in the garment industry to incorporate all stages of production. More than 2,000 buyers, fellow manufacturers, union officials, suppliers, and associates attended the November 1958 opening. This graceful, minimalist structure was the factory's architectural highlight. With basically a square footprint, the glazed walls and floating cantilevered roof expressed a stylish modern sensibility that reflected the company's concern for fashion and the welfare of its employees. To illustrate a well-designed single-story ranch-type plant, a photograph of the pavilion was included in the August 1958 proposal to modify the New York City zoning resolution, which is illustrated at the left, as well as various newspapers and trade journals, such as Women's Wear Daily, The Architectural Record, and Progressive Architecture. Bethlehem Steel, which supplied the pavilion's steel framing, praised the distinctive steel umbrellas in advertisements, which it said created a unique setting in which to work. In November 1958, the Queen's Chamber of Commerce awarded the Barkin Levin factory first prize in the industrial class. Among 10 prize winners, only the glass-walled office pavilion was illustrated in the New York Times. Despite receiving considerable attention in the press, within 2 years, the coat factory closed and the complex was leased to the Structural Display Company, a designer and fabricator of exhibition displays and commercial fixtures. In subsequent years, each edition of the American Institute of Architecture Guide to New York City Architecture documented the building's importance, including a photograph of the office pavilion, which was variously described as crisp and sophisticated, as well as poorly maintained. The current owner refurbished the Barkin Levin Office Pavilion in 2009, reversing an unfortunate addition to the more visible north facade that for many years enclosed the cantilevered roof and brick pathway. At this time, a new entrance foyer as well as an inconspicuous rear extension was added to the south facade. Shown here in red, the proposed landmark site is the northwest corner of a large tax lot that includes the former Barkin Levin factory building, a windowless structure to the south. The proposed landmark site reflects the existing condition of the site and includes the office pavilion at the corner of 33rd Avenue and 12th Street and the lawns surrounding it. The south boundary is the edge of the lawn at the existing factory wall. A one-story connecting corridor between the two is non-contributing. Commissioners at the public hearing on November 28th, a representative of the owner supported designation and presented a plan for the redevelopment of the site to the south using air rights from the Barkin Levin Pavilion. This will include replacing the connecting corridor with an outdoor path, creating a driveway separating the landmark site from the new development, and preserving the open space in front of the building so the pavilion will be experienced in the round. The driveway would cut through the landmark site, and LPC will consider that in the future. A little-known architectural gem in Western Queens, the research department recommends that the commission vote to designate the Barkin Levin office building an individual landmark.
Thank you, Matt. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Matt or Kate?
I do.
Yes, Vice Chair Bland.
Yeah. If you could go back to the site plan that shows the designation site. Red. Well, no, the one before that. I'm trying to connect this one to that one and understand what that little panhandle to the right of the designation site is, what's there and what will be there.
Do you want me to go ahead to the other one?
Sure. The next one,
Sure.
yeah. So currently there is a parking lot on
Yeah,
that
I
space.
saw that.
It's, I'm not sure in itself that size of that parking lot is buildable, but at any rate, the owners, when they testified in support, talked about their future plans for proposal, which they were undertaking at this time. And that would be to take all of the development and push it to the south where there's a much larger portion of the site. And then to separate, well, actually on this map, the south is to the right. And then to separate the Barkin Levin building from that new development by a driveway that would cut diagonally through.
That's a new driveway,
That's a
right?
new driveway.
Right.
And in doing so, they would preserve the open space around the Barkin.
On all four sides.
On all four sides.
That was my rest of my question. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so let's move to our discussion. Vice Chair Bland, did you have any thoughts on this?
I have lots of thoughts. When has this thing been working? This is I think a marvelous new addition to our roster. I'm no real prognosticator, but I would bet that this building increases in importance over time. It's not nice, I guess, but boy, it's pretty darn close. And Ulrich Franz, and it's also not nice, but he's showing this to be one of his early works, showing a later and pretty illustrious career. So I'm thrilled about this, and I think really over time, this building will be seen in an even more favorable light than it is today, which I think is pretty favorable. So.
Thank you. Stephen is one of our Queens commissioners. I know you know the site fairly well.
Yes, I think this is an amazing building. It is actually one of the first mid-century modern buildings in Queens when it was built. And the architect that I know as well has done typically more brutalist buildings, but this is unusual for him to do such a light, elegant design. But yes, definitely a gorgeous building, and for Queens, a good addition to the landmarks.
Thank you. Yeah. Any Commissioner Jefferson?
This is a gem, and it's also an educational tool because his houses are similar. So this is a transition from his housing in Connecticut to the larger project. So it's a good choice.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Goldblum.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a wonderful designation. I just checked. It was when I looked at it at first, I was thinking about a few different things. Like it reminded me of there's a whole big trend in the 30s and 40s of these concrete, minimalist, thin shell kind of constructions that it seems to be emulating in steel. But then it occurs to me, like, maybe this was Franzen's response to the Heidi Weber Pavilion, which was done in steel by Le Corbusier, which had a similar inverted form. And it turns out Heidi Weber was later. Heidi Weber was 60 to 67, which I thought was kind of interesting. So it has that same feel of this, light shell, off, construction. But it totally deserves to be protected as a landmark. But I do want to raise again I think that the boundary drawing should have included that parking lot to the side. It's a blessing and a grace that the owner is going to be preserving that. But in the case of this building, as a modern building, the space in front of it is as important as the building itself. Having a building 5 feet away would not work. So I think it's great that it's okay. Boundaries should have been extended to the
Would that be the east?
That would be to where the
east
to the yes up on the drawing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I appreciate that. I think, these are, this was a very long conversation with the owners, and we've worked with them very collaboratively over several years to get to this point. And so I feel confident in their intention and happy that we're able to move forward. Does anyone else have any thoughts?
One more question, just the developer will be doing its work as part of the overall scheme. And is there a use for it yet determined? Do we know?
I think they're still thinking that through as they move through.
Because if we always know that an empty building is a terrible preservation issue, so.
And as Matt noted, they would have to come back to us at some point for the changes that do encroach on the landmark site, and we'll think about how to deal with that at the time, and hopefully there will be an update on the use then and also. Any other thoughts? Yes, Commissioner Chapin.
I just want to echo the remarks of my colleagues about the importance of the design, and it's always nice to see a new landmark in Queens, and as Commissioner Bland often says, as we're working through and finding some more modern landmarks, that's also very exciting. So,
Commissioner Ginsburg.
I'll agree with my colleagues.
Any other thoughts? Okay, and I think sort of on a personal note, but not on a maybe not the primary reason for significance. I think I also wanted to just note that Ulrich Franzen was actually the designer of the very first building that the commission approved in a historic district, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society Dormitory in Brooklyn Heights. So he has some significance here in that. And then as well, he served as an LPC commissioner in the 1990s, right before I started. Yeah. So we have some personal connection to him, which I think makes this even sweeter. And before we vote, I do want to also note that while we've been talking to the owners, this first came onto my radar thanks to Frampton Tolbert, who at the time was wearing his Queen's Modern hat. And of course, now is the executive director of HDC. But we spoke about this in March of 2020, right before everything shut down. And then as soon as we were sort of back to work, we started to work with the owners. And I do want to thank the owners for working so closely with us as we talked about a process and what that process would look like and what the designation would look like, and to move to a successful designation. So I want to thank Frampton. I want to thank the owners for their engaging us. And I want to thank the research team because, of course, our staff is amazing. And you may not know it, but our research department has a modern architecture committee, I think sort of led by Matt, our expert. And so, of course, this was, I think, on their radar always. And so thank you for also doing all the work that you've done to bring it here today. All right. So we should move to a vote. And if everybody agrees, Commissioner Chu, would you make the motion?
So moved.
No, actually, you have to read the motion.
I move that the Landmarks Preservation Commission designate the Barkin, Levin Company Office Pavilion, 1212 33rd Avenue, Borough of Queens, as a New York City landmark because of its special character and special historical and aesthetic interest and value as part of the development, heritage, and cultural characteristics of the city, state, and nation, and set forth in the designation report for LP 2675, dated December 19, 2023. I also move that the Borough of Queens tax map block 522 lot 29 in part be designated as its landmark site, as described in the designation report and illustrated in the attached map.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chapin, would you second that motion?
second.
Mark?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Commissioner Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
With 10 in favor and none opposed, the motion passed.
Right. Our newest New York City landmark. Thank you, Matt. All right, item number 2, LP 2676, the Modulightor Building at 246 East 58th Street in Manhattan, block 1331, lot 128. Item proposed for designation as a mixed-use structure designed in a late 20th century modern style by the architect Paul Rudolph in 1989. Presenting is Matt Postal.
An important work by the innovative American architect Paul Rudolph, the Modulightor Building was designed in 1988, 1989. Constructed in two distinct phases, the lower floors were mostly completed in 1993, 4 years before the architect's death. At the public hearing on November 28, 2023, 4 people testified in support of designation, including representatives of the Paul Rudolph Institute for Modern Architecture, the New York Landmarks Conservancy, Docomomo US and New York Tri-State, and the New York LGBT Historic Sites Project. No one spoke in opposition. In addition, the commission received 30 written submissions in support of designation. The Modulightor Building is located in Manhattan at 246 East 58th Street, slightly west of 2nd Avenue. Paul Rudolph was a leading figure in American architecture during the latter half of the 20th century. Born in Kentucky, he attended the Harvard Graduate School of Design, where he developed a modern sculptural aesthetic using industrial materials like concrete and steel. Rudolph moved his thriving practice to Manhattan at the height of his career in the mid-1960s when he headed the Yale School of Architecture. During this period of his career, he designed many important buildings, including the Jewett Art Center, Tuskegee University Chapel, and the Yale School of Art, of Art and Architecture, now known as Rudolph Hall. Though some of Rudolph's projects in the metropolitan area remained unrealized, 2 of his Manhattan buildings are New York City landmarks: the Paul Rudolph Penthouse and Apartments at 23 Beekman Place, and the so-called Halston House at 101 East 63rd Street, which is part of the Upper East Side Historic District. Rudolph purchased the property in February 1989. He and Ernst Wagner, who co-founded the Modulightor Lighting Company in 1976, developed a plan to rebuild the structure as a sales showroom and apartments. Located on a standard 20 by 100 foot lot, the Modulightor Building replaced an 1860s row house that had been substantially remodeled into a commercial structure by the early 1960s. During the first phase of construction, Rudolph acted as his own contractor. In 1990, he and Wagner moved their offices into the unfinished building. The Department of Buildings issued a certificate of occupancy for the cellar, first floor, and mezzanine in May 1993. Rudolph died in 1997. Under Mark Squio, who worked in the architect's office during the early 1990s, a second phase of construction was planned in 2007. Based on Rudolph drawings in the collection of the Library of Congress, such as the rendering at left, this phase added 2 new floors as well as a roof deck. It was completed by 2016. Rudolph enclosed the building with a remarkably lively and intricate facade. Painted white, the steel I-beams form jigsaw-like screens that recall the spatial investigations of the De Stijl founder Theo van Doesburg in the 1910s and 20s, as well as the engineered elegance of Mies van der Rohe, particularly his Farnsworth House of 1951. Grids also frequently appear in Rudolph's earlier residential commissions, such as the Walker Guest House and the Milan Residence. Named for the architectural lighting company Rudolph founded with Wagner in 1976, the Modulightor Building contains a ground floor commercial space, as well as a duplex apartment and exhibition space, which is owned and occupied by the Paul Rudolph Institute for Modern Architecture, formerly known as the Paul Rudolph Heritage Foundation. The Modulightor Building is an important late work by Paul Rudolph, one of the 20th century's most imaginative and innovative architects. The research department recommends that the commission vote to designate the Modulightor Building an individual landmark.
Thank you, Matt. All right, any questions on this one? All right, any thoughts? Lots of thoughts? Why don't you go ahead again, Vice Chair Bland?
The only one. Oh, that's good. Rudolph was the reason I became an architect, so he was an important guy for me. But I never could study with him because he left well before I could start studying there. But I think most people know that his a lot of his projects were, shall we say, troubled. They looted, they did all sorts of things that, you know, owners never liked. But they were always artistic, masterpieces. But because of the problems, many of them were removed from Earth. And over some controversies and fights to save them. So therefore, I think it's really important that those that have remained and presumably are not so troubled, you know, as buildings, it's important that they remain, and Rudolph's legacy can be seen in the city where he did live. I once visited him in 1994, I think it was, at his now landmark house on Beekman Place, as I was tasked with updating the A&A building at Yale. And went to him personally because he was still alive, as opposed to usually the work that we do, we have to go to the books and see what history tells us. But he was there and alive, and very suspicious because his building was hated by Yale at that time. But things come around, he came around and got to be friendly with me enough that he was offering to do some sketches and drawings, which I still have, of the A&A building. Anyway, I think this is a great designation, partly because there are fewer and fewer Rudolph buildings around, and he's undeniably an important mid-century and later architect in the U.S.
Yes, Commissioner Levy.
First, I just want to thank the research department for, again, you know, coming to us with very interesting work, stuff that we might not be expecting. The fact that these are mid-century buildings, I'm a huge fan of that. Thank you, Matt, too. And I just wanted to highlight it's I know not it is no coincidence that you brought them both together, because they're of the same period, and these two architects were in fact contemporaries and knew each other. And I think the other interesting thing is that both of these projects are aberrations from their brutalist style. And so they're a little more refined, and they're definitely more an expression of what was going on at this particular time. And as Fred said, I think we're so fortunate to sort of capture them and, you know, preserve them and recognize them. And I'm so happy to be part of that process.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah, this is one of Sarah and I favorite buildings. And the reason is that the intricacy of it, and every couple of years we go and visit it, and the exterior is so intricate with the metal pieces. And then we go inside and it becomes even more intricate. And we begin to wonder the mind of this guy, how he was able to put these pieces together and move around. It's just a marvelous experience.
Thank you. Yeah, Commissioner Goldblum.
Agreed. I was lucky enough to tour this building a few, I guess, years ago, and it's really a marvel, not only because of its design, which is remarkable, because of the integration of the client of the architect's own personality and history into every aspect of the building. It's his Taliesin in a way, you know. He worked there. He lived there. He made it, you know, he wanted it to be kind of this little idealized expression of his ideology and methodology built in a mid-block site in Manhattan, of all places. And it's really a remarkable site, and the prospect that the interior could become designated as well is I think to be greatly anticipated. When you see work like this, it's so mechanistic in design. It's rectilinear, his drawings are so crisp and sharp. And then you go and you see how he did it. And it's, the technology of the 1960s or so kind of loose and handmade and artisanal in a way. It kind of works against the design, but it makes it more charming at the same time. It's a really fascinating building and greatly deserving of protection.
Great. Yes, Commissioner Chen.
Just, it's fascinating to think how 20 floors they are in the city of New York, 2,500, right? And we talk about thinking differently and to Michael's point, when I was studying, it's just fascinating how about being hated, right? And just talking about taking a 20-footer and designing so differently to his own style. But also, I remember being in all of this housing structure to think about the homelessness that we have in the city, similar to Moshe Safdie's habitat, the machine for living type of style. But I just think that, to Vice Chair Brandt's point is that sometimes we really have to think differently because, something that we might hate and think that this is appropriate. It's just, it's a progression of our life. And I think sometime along the line, we may have to think differently to think about, in this winter, how many people will be sleeping on the street.
Thank you for those thoughts. Anyone else?
I want to just add something that what Michael said. I hadn't really thought about it like this, but Rudolph is his own architect. His own clients are here, Weekend Place, and infamously at the ALA&A. And so I don't know how many architects will so much their own clients on 3 important buildings.
Yeah.
You're like, they first want to hire someone else and they going to do a lobby for us.
All right. Commissioner Chu.
So the architects have a lot to say about this one, obviously, but I've always loved his sensibility to human scale. And if you look at this as essentially a glass building, it has so much human scale to it. And you compare it to a lot of the developer buildings being done right now, which are very flat. This doesn't have a lot of depth, but with that minimal depth, he's able to achieve shadow, light, and human scale, which is so wonderful.
Yeah, nice observation. All right. Okay. So I think we have a lot of support for this one as well, and incredibly important architect. Also, other buildings by him have been remarked, and I think this would be a great addition to our very special New York City landmarks. And again, I want to thank the owners. We've been working with the institute that runs the building, and they have been very engaged and very supportive. And we've had really wonderful exchanges and conversations about this. And as I mentioned with the calendaring, we've also been talking about the interior, which is not yet of age, but we're talking to them, and we'll keep an eye on that until it does become eligible for consideration. But would love to move ahead with this today. And so I think we all are in support, and we'll make a motion. Commissioner Chen, would you like to make the motion?
I'm delighted to. I move that the Landmarks Preservation Commission designate the Modulightor Building, 246 East 58th Street, Borough, Manhattan, as a New York City landmark because of his special character and his special historical and aesthetic interest and value as part of development, heritage, and cultural characteristics of the city, state, and nation, as set forth in the designation report for LP-2676 dated December 2023. I also move that the Borough Manhattan Test Map Block 1331, Lot 128 be designated as its landmark site as described in the designation report and illustrated in the attached map.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
Clark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland. Aye.
Commissioner Chapin?
Aye.
Commissioner Chen? Aye. Commissioner Chu? Aye. Commissioner Ginsburg? Aye. Commissioner Goldblum?
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi?
Aye.
Commissioner Master?
Aye.
10 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Right, yay.
Item number 3, LP 2679, One Wall Street Banking Room Interior, One Wall Street, Manhattan, Block 23, Lot 7501, previously Lot 7 in part. Item proposed for the commission's calendar is the former banking hall and reception room of the Irving Trust Company at One Wall Street, designed in the Art Deco style by Ralph Walker in 1931 and featuring elaborate mosaic tile wall and ceiling finishes designed by Hildreth Mayer, consisting of the building's northernmost room and its fixtures and interior components, which may include but are not limited to the historic wall surfaces, ceiling surfaces, floor surfaces, columns, vestibule, lighting fixtures, attached furnishings, doors, windows, decorative metalwork, and attached decorative elements. Presenting this is Lisa Buckley.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Buckley from the Research Department. Completed in 1931, the banking room of One Wall Street was conceived by architect Ralph Walker, a muralist Hildreth Mayer, as the impressive reception room and banking hall of the Irving Trust Company. This extraordinary, elaborately tiled space, known as the Red Room, was the first of several interior collaborations between Mayer and Walker, and is the only abstract mosaic mural by Mayer, whose designs typically included allegorical figures executed in an Art Deco manner. One Wall Street, a designated individual landmark, is located at the intersection of Broadway and Wall Street in the heart of Manhattan's financial district. Banking room occupies the north end of the first floor of the building. The landmark site is illustrated here, outlined in red. The One Wall Street building, originally Irving Trust Company building, now the Bank of New York building, was designated in 2001 and sensitively converted to residential and retail use in 2022. The stunning former banking hall interior is the building's original public reception space and remains incredibly intact. Ralph Walker, the architect of One Wall Street, was a principal of Voorhees, Gmelin, and Walker. Walker was one of New York's most noteworthy designers of Art Deco high-rise buildings. He became known for designing buildings for telecommunications companies, including several buildings for AT&T, as well as other groups. Harry Coke Smith, Ralph Walker's assistant in charge of the banking hall, went on to become a partner in the firm in 1938. His notable architectural designs include the Mud Chemistry Building at Columbia University. Hildreth Mayer was a highly talented and accomplished muralist, proficient in a variety of mediums. Mayer's work includes painted and mosaic murals in churches and synagogues throughout the country, as well as the rondelles on the facade of Radio City Music Hall. After One Wall Street, Walker and Mayer next collaborated on the AT&T long distance building lobby, and thereafter on several subsequent buildings for other corporate interests. Construction at One Wall Street commenced in 1929 and was completed in 1931. The decorative concept was developed by Walker, who engaged Mayer to work on the banking hall mural. Abstract designs were a departure from Mayer's typically representative murals and mosaics, both preceding and after. She collaborated with Smith to develop the color gradations and scale of the design. The aim was to develop a design that was warm and inviting, contrasting with the cold marble of earlier banking halls. While there is a repeating motif throughout the room, its irregular shape means that each surface appears distinctive and unique. Each elevation was designed with an alphanumeric code that was stamped on individual tiles to indicate their installation location. The Irving Bank and Trust Company and its successor firms occupied the building and continued to use the banking room until 2014. As you can see in these photographs, the room has had several different configurations, originally sparsely furnished and by the mid-century carpeted in red, of course, and furnished with symmetrical rows of desks. The banking room's undulating walls, ceiling, and columns gleam with intricate mosaic tile in warm colors that begin in oxblood red near the floor and fade upward to orange across the ceiling. These colored tiles are all intertwined with web-like patterns of gold tiles that creates a striking verticality. The walls mimic the curved stone facades of the Art Deco skyscraper's exterior. The design of the room overlooks no details. Pictured here are examples of the meticulously designed heating grates located throughout the room. The banking hall remains largely unchanged since its construction. Minor changes made to the space are limited to updated light fixtures, replacement of tile flooring, ceiling penetrations for light fixtures and sprinklers, and some replacement heating grates. The current owners undertook a full restoration of the former banking hall. It was temporarily used as a sales office for the condominiums occupying the upper stories of the building and is now being converted to retail space. Commissioners, you may recall a recent application for the exterior alterations to this building, including the changes to the entry vestibule in this space. This will be carried out as part of ongoing rehabilitation work, including restoring the transparency of the monumental windows and reversible furnishing installations. Representing the work of masters of their fields, the banking room of One Wall Street is a striking and rare example of an abstract mosaic interior by Mier and an elaborate stylistic departure from the typical stone-clad banking hall. The research department recommends that the Landmarks Preservation Commission vote to calendar the One Wall Street banking room for consideration as an interior landmark.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions on this one?
Questions?
Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Goldblum.
What's the format of it?
The floor, there's a tile floor underneath that's been largely removed, and there's carpet was over it.
So there's no original floor.
There are tiny patches of it, but it's not very much of it.
Okay. And it was a clay tile, a porcelain tile, or a stone?
I'm not sure. I think it was the same tile that was used on the walls.
Oh, wow. And the columns?
They are a marble, a stone of some sort.
And are we aware of any plans to, as part of this retail conversion to modify the interior in any way, lighting, other stuff?
Well, you remember when we saw the application.
The outside.
Right, and that did include enlarging the interior vestibule. So we already have seen that.
Right.
They are continuing to do restoration work, and the work that they will be doing will include more restoration, like removing the film from the windows, making them transparent again, continuing to restore finishes, and then the installation of reversible furnishings. And so working closely with them, it's not yet open to the public. And so we have to, we would be scheduling a vote at the time that it is open to the public, because that's when it is technically eligible.
Got it. Thanks.
Other questions? Yes, Vice Chair Bland.
Another question, just a comment, whether it could be the space that the architect designed is worthy in and of itself, but I think but maybe not, without the woman who did the murals and the mosaics, I should say, not the murals. And so I just think it's kind of a completely equal collaboration, perhaps even weighted for the mosaics. And so I just want to be sure that we're always giving her the credit that she deserves to have in this, because it's I've been in there once and it's just jaw dropping. I tried to go in recently and was barred at the door.
Maybe because I said it was a landmarks commission. It wasn't a carte blanche. I tried that and put it in there.
Because it isn't open to the public yet, it's, as I said, we technically can't vote yet, but we can see if we can arrange a tour for commissioners who wish to see it before we get to a point of a vote. All right, Kate, did you want to?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to respond a little more about the question about the flooring. I think as we gather more of our research about the historic finishes and existing conditions, we'll be able to speak in more detail about that. There's some evidence that there may have been terrazzo flooring, and there's certainly a lot of mastic on the floor now. So I think as we, identify the finishes, that will become part of the report that we write, and we'll be able to tell you more at the hearing.
Do we have any idea of what the owner plans to do about the floor?
I'm not sure I do. Carpet, replacing carpet, I think is the plans. Yeah.
I think the idea is to sort of just protect and preserve what's there while they have high volume. They're hoping to have high volume visitors. All right. Any other thoughts?
Hopefully, as just being discussed, the owners will consider, looking at the historic flooring as they're looking at everything else. And it's just great to, after 20 plus years, see the interior up for designation. And Art Deco is kind of my favorite period. So this is such a unique example. Hope you can get a tour of it. It's and also that we can speedily move forward. And, you just think about these kinds of interiors that get lost sometimes because they are not available to the public. And so it's great to see this happening.
Yeah. And I think, the tenants have been, very, again, cooperative and forthcoming, and I think really embrace the historic character. That's why they want to be there. It works with their own style. And so it's really a positive experience to work with a tenant that, really embraces the space and wants to be in it because of its incredible significance and material. So they are being very careful. I think Commissioner Chu, did you want to say?
I just was noting that this is an interior landmark designation as we were looking at, but I found it so amazing how well this works with its exterior, because when you're on the street looking in through these windows, this gold and red tile glow, and it's just this warmth coming out of the openings that wants to pull you in there. And then you get this spectacular arrival that really celebrates that space. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. Commissioner Coco.
I wonder, it'd be really interesting if there was any connection between Ralph Walker and Expressionism. Because this room does not look Art Deco to me. It looks expressionist to me. It looks like it's from Nosferatu or something. It's like this, it's the plan shape, the design. And I wonder, and then I start to think like, maybe some of that brickwork has that same jagged, bizarre feel. And it was definitely of the moment, in the 20s. I wonder if there's a connection there historically.
You may find that in the continued research. So, all right.
Yes. Actually, saw a comment about the transparency. Across the street is a Trinity Church stone glass with the red and the sides of the street balancing each other out. This is I love the work. Yeah, this is such a beautiful piece of work.
Yes, Commissioner Jefferson.
From an artistic point of view, the author of that was working with platforms. Do you have more information on how her thought process was and what she was thinking about at that time?
Yeah, they did small scale drawings and then blew them up to full size to determine the layout of the tile. So, and then it was sent to a tile manufacturer in Germany, where they manufactured the mosaics by the panel with the pieces intact. Or the place where they would be.
The images are not abstractions of geometric forms. They look like organic, linear. And was she working with platforms, or what was her thinking?
That's a good question. I couldn't say.
Okay, thank you.
Right, well, this has been an interesting discussion, and I think much can inform our research as we move forward and think more about the designers, and the murals and the sort of stylistic choices. So
The observatory upstairs has another incredibly vaulted, beautiful ceiling as well. I was just reading about how they got their tiles from their shells or reflective silver shells. So countering this golden and red down here, there's a theme in the whole building.
yeah, it's an incredible space. Okay, so I think we can move to make a motion. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion that we calendar?
So move.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu, would you second that motion?
Second.
Second.
We got 2 seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, this is officially calendared and we will schedule a public hearing in the new year. And again, we'll sort of time our process with the opening of the space so that it's eligible at the time of the vote. And in the meantime, we will continue to do research and prepare for the hearing. All right. Thank you, Kate, and thank you, team. And we will now move to the Preservation Department agenda. And Corey Harala, Director of Preservation, will take us through those items.
All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to start today's Preservation Department agenda with 2 items on the public meeting list. However, they were both items that were read into the record, so they'll be presented for the first time today. First is public meeting item number 1, LPC 24-00195. This is an application for certificate of appropriateness in the borough of Manhattan, block 194, lot 16. 32 to 34 Walker Street, aka 305 to 309 Church Street in the Tribeca East Historic District. It's a commercial building designed by Larry Meltzer and built in 1953 to 54, and also an Italianate style L-shaped store and loft building designed by EJM Derrick and built in 1867 to 68. The application is to demolish the 1953-54 building, to construct a new building, and to alter facades and construct rooftop additions. As mentioned, this was previously read into the record as being presented for the first time today. And the applicants will begin after we open the hearing.
Okay, so we need to open up the hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to open up the hearing? Thank you. Commissioner Master, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the hearing is open and the applicant may begin.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. Ward Dennis with Higgins Groves Bars and Partners. I'm joined today by Stephen Thompson, the architect of record for the project, as well as representatives from the development team and Sarah Ripple from my office. Project we are presenting this morning, there we go, is 32 Walker Street. The project site consists of the 2-story taxpayer at the corner of Walker and Church, as well as the 5-story cast iron building, which wraps around the taxpayer site. So on the left-hand side in the left photo is the Church Street, Church Street, 309 Church is our building address on that side, and then 34 Walker is our building address on the Walker Street side to the right. The proposal is for a new 6-story contemporary building clad in limestone that will be connected at the interior with the cast iron building. Taking you through the buildings, the cast iron buildings were designed, it was a single building, designed by EJM Derrick in 1867, 1868. The 2-story taxpayer was designed by architect by the name of Larry Meltzer. It was constructed in 1954. You'll see in a moment it replaced an earlier loft building. You can see on the right the 2 storefronts, Walker Street at the top, Church Street at the bottom. The cast iron buildings are very much intact with the exception of the base of the building at the storefronts. All the storefront infill has been removed. A lot of the decorative details, including the column capitals, have also been removed, and we will be replacing those in fiberglass
We will also be doing restoration at the upper portions of the building. Most of that is being done at the staff level. There are a couple of things here that I want to point out for you that is part of the public hearing agenda. On the bottom right, you can see on the Walker Street side, we have historic fire escapes, probably not original, but very old, very early in the history of the building. On the top left on Church Street, we have a much later fire escape. We are proposing to remove the Church Street fire escape, but we are proposing to keep the fire escape on Walker Street. Also, we are working with staff and we are doing a full window replacement at staff level. There's one exception on the windows that does fall under your jurisdiction. If you notice on the top left, there is a very wide mullion where they have previously inserted doors to get out to the fire escapes. We want to retain that wider mullion at that place because we have a wall for bedrooms that comes out to the facade there, and I'll show you that in detail later. The rest of the windows and the rest of the facade work is being done at staff level. So on the bottom left here, you can see the earlier loft building that existed at the corner site. It was also designed in 1867. The architect was John B. Snook, who did a lot of loft buildings in Tribeca, as well as some major buildings throughout New York City. It's interesting that the corner building was a marble building. The cast iron to either side, obviously at the time, was intended to replicate marble. Our proposed building will be limestone, recalling that marble facade. And then at the right side, you can see the two-story taxpayer as it existed in probably its most glorious form as Caliente Cab Company in the 1990s. The marble building was demolished in 1945. The taxpayer was constructed in 1954. The designation report does not identify it as any sort of contributing building to the district. So here then again is the comparison of the existing to the proposed. Obviously, we are reestablishing the corner, filling in that void at the corner. You can see that the composition of the new building is a contemporary design. It is in limestone to recall the building that was there previously. Because we are connecting internally, all of the floor heights from the cast iron to the new building will align. So the hierarchy of the cast iron building, which does get slightly shorter as you go up the facade, is replicated in the new building. And as well, you can see that and we'll show in further detail, the new building has incredible depth to it. You can also see, I think this is an interesting comparison, particularly looking at the base of the building and the composition of the historic building that was there previously. At the base, you do have this very strong reading of the columns going along Church Street and then turning the corner onto Walker Street. We have a cornice above that wraps around at the second story level. And then on the upper floors, we have established a much stronger, wider corner pier with then the horizontals running from pier to pier within, which is similar to what you see happening on the Snook building on this corner, as well as on many other, particularly masonry buildings in the district. There are, of course, within Tribeca East and nearby, many examples of new buildings that the commission has approved. We highlighted these in part because they sort of show these are all contemporary designs. They sort of show different levels of abstraction, and I think our building fits well within sort of the middle range of the abstraction here. We are certainly referencing specific historic features, but also abstracting them and creating a clearly contemporary modern building. The Lispinard building that is at the top right photo is a block to the north of us. That too fills in a sort of vacant corner with a taxpayer. Also want to point out that all of these buildings are 6 stories or taller. We are proposing a 6-story building for our corner. We, of course, looked at much of the context within Tribeca East Historic District, in particular, the masonry loft buildings from the mid-century and the cast iron loft buildings from the mid-19th century. To note again, there is a very much a variety in building height throughout the district. A lot of, even among the 5 to 6 story loft buildings, you can see significant variations in height. Often, as at the top 2 photos, the top left photo is a block to the north of us. The top right is about a block to the east of us, west of us, I'm sorry, with the taller corner buildings. And then, of course, the cast iron buildings and the earlier loft buildings that were incredibly glassy when you look at them. They have very large window openings. That, of course, is accentuated by the use of cast iron, which allowed for that amount of glass within the facade. Some more details here from other buildings within the district. At the far left, you can see the very deeply set storefront piers. This is something that very much comes out in our design for the ground floor of the new building. And then that sort of stacked series of colonnades that defines many of the masonry and cast iron buildings and is recalled in our design as well. Our building is 50 feet on Church, 25 feet on Walker Street, so very much picks up on that 25-foot wide rhythm that goes up and down the street from the 19th century module. We also then, we have a tripartite design in terms of the horizontal arrangement of windows, 3 windows across, 6 windows on Church Street, again, very much picking up on the rhythm of the openings within the block. And then the floor heights, as I mentioned, do align with the cast iron buildings adjacent. So we do get that sense of hierarchy in the facade, which you can see in this elevation. This shows the rest of our block going to the north on Church Street. You can also see here variations in height along the block. And then looking a few buildings to our east on Walker Street, a number of these buildings have 1 and 2 story rooftop additions. The one immediately to our right at 36 Walker was recently approved by the commission. We are proposing setback additions on top of both sides of the cast iron building, which you can see here, and then a 7-story small penthouse, which we'll see in detail later. Looking a bit closer on the building, starting with the cast iron building. This is a Church Street facade, the cast iron building at 309 to the left. The storefronts and most of the work on the facade is being done at staff level. We are proposing fiberglass column capitals at the storefront base, and that is part of the certificate of appropriateness. And then you can see that center line of windows where we have a slightly wider mullion in order to accommodate a wall at the interior. And then you can see above the cast iron building, setback about 12 feet on this facade, is a 1-story penthouse, and then the 7-story penthouse above. And then on the new building, again, carrying across the horizontals at the base of the building, we have a retail entrance to the far right at the southernmost bay on Church Street. We are proposing signage, halo lit signage at the new building, and adhesive applied letters 8 inches tall at the architrave of the cast iron building. And then also to note here, the fire escape has been removed. And then moving around the corner, very similar to what we just showed, fiberglass column capitals. We are retaining the older fire escape on this facade. We do have a 1-story setback addition. It's set back 8 feet on Walker Street, and the Walker Street addition is not visible from the street. Then the 3-bay rhythm of the windows coming across and at the storefront below on the new building. Section through, again, the floor heights through the new building are really dictated by the slab to slab heights of the historic building. We pick up an inch or two because our structural slabs are a little bit shallower than on the historic building, but the floors will line. And then this is a section through one of the historic buildings showing setback penthouse at the 6th story and then the 7th story above. Floor plans. This is a cellar floor plan. Just want to point out here that if you notice these very thick masonry walls, we are retaining most of the structural walls of the L throughout the building. We're not doing underpinning. We're not going down below the existing basement level. So structurally and physically, we are retaining a lot of the historic structure of the cast iron buildings, not flowing out walls and the like. And you can see that as well here. There are sort of discrete openings between the cast iron and the new building. At the top level here, we have 2 entrances. This is the main entrance for the residential at the center. We have a secondary egress entrance exit at the easternmost bay. And then you can get a sense here, and you'll see in a little more detail, how deeply recessed the facade of the new building is. The facade itself is recessed, and then the piers as well are recessed. So you get a very good sense of the depth that similar to what we saw in some of those context photos. This is a detail at the base of the building on Church Street, again, showing that depth with the strong corner pier and the strong flanking pier at the north side of the new building, with then the intermediary piers recessed within. So we do get a great sense of depth throughout the facade. You can also see in more detail the fiberglass column capitals and the proposed signage at the corner. Also to note on both sides, the most of the building is limestone at the base. We are proposing gray basalt bulkheads. You can see that those are those roughly aligned. They're not exactly aligned, but they roughly align with the historic storefront bulkheads that will be installed. And those are made slightly taller to read as bulkheads. And we do have signage over the residential entrance to mark that. Typical upper floors, again, retaining most of the structural system of the cast iron building with just a single opening here on the east side of the building coming through. This is the bedroom split on the Church Street side, which necessitates that wider mullion. If anybody has 2 kids in a typical New York City row house or whatever, where you have 3 windows, 1 kid usually gets the smaller room, like my daughter. This is attempting to equalize that. Structural section detail through the new building. You can see that at the upper floors, we have about a 33-inch depth from the face of the horizontals to the window system itself. These are French doors that will tilt in at the top for ventilation. And there is a glass railing at the front. The 40 inches on the right is wrong. It's actually a 45-inch glass railing with a metal cap. This is a detail of that window treatment. Again, that 9-inch mullion at the center is actually the width of the existing mullions on the windows. And you can see then the detail of the wall coming in to meet that. All the rest of the windows will match the historic and are being approved at staff level. Window details for the new building, if anyone is curious for that. Again, these are French doors, and we'll have a tilt at the top. and then a detail for the facade cladding, except for that bulkhead at the ground floor. The entire facade is limestone clad, horizontals projecting out with then the piers recessed within, the French doors, and then you can see down here the plan detail showing the limestone clad pier as well as the limestone flooring. The railings are set back 6 inches from the face of the building, and then the facade 2 feet behind that. So total by the time you get to the glass is about 32, 33 inches. At the 6th floor, again, we are proposing additions on the cast iron buildings. The 6th floor addition on Walker Street at the top right is set back 8 feet. That is not visible from any location on the public way. The addition at the bottom left on Church Street is set back 12 feet. We did that. We set it back a little bit further when we were doing the mock-up. We realized that it was more visible than we liked. There is still some visibility of that Church Street penthouse, but it is pretty minimal. And then at the 7th story, this is the 7th story penthouse. A good chunk of it is taken up by stairs and elevator, and then on the west side, wrapping around, is the occupiable space of the penthouse. And I'm sorry, that is set back about 25 feet from Walker Street and about 21 feet from Church Street. And then roof plan just showing the mechanical equipment is set all the way to the northeast. Details for the penthouse, the slab to slab on the penthouse is about 11 feet. The clear height within the penthouse is about 9.5 feet. And the elevator override is about 6 feet above the penthouse. And then you can see also the glass railing at the top. View on the other side, and then view section and elevation on the north side. Section through, again, that's about a 9-foot floor to ceiling within the penthouse, 6 feet of elevator override. Materials, again, Indiana limestone is a primary cladding material for the new building. We're showing a white, sort of cream white color for the cast iron building. That will probably adjust a little bit based on the color of the new building, the color of the limestone. Green paint for the storefronts. The elevator override bulkhead will be white stucco matching the limestone. Bronze coloring for the windows, and then the gray basalt at the bottom left for the storefront bulkheads. We have a series of renderings that I will go through with you. This is an axon showing the configuration at the roof. The corner building is 6 stories. There's 6-story setback penthouses on the cast iron building, and then the 7th-story penthouse set to the northeast. View at the ground level looking north on Church Street. I think this gives you a good sense of the depth that you get from these recessed storefronts and the piers and the projecting horizontal of the 2nd-story cornice, as well as the depth that you are getting on the facade on the upper levels with the recess of the storefronts and the piers set between horizontals. We did do a mock-up on, obviously only on top of the cast iron building. We have shown in each of the photos, we'll show you a view of the mock-up as on the left, and then with the new building rendered in on the right, and then a detail on the far right. So this is that view from sort of just diagonally across on Church Street. You can see at the very top here, there is a slight visibility of that setback 6-story penthouse and the railing above. That visibility disappears very quickly as you move north on Church Street. So it's only really for a few feet on Church that you get that visibility. This is a view standing in front of 32 Avenue Americas, looking east on Walker Street. With the new building in place, the only visibility will be a slight visibility of the glass railing at the 6-story setback on the Church Street side. View looking west on Walker Street, there is no visibility of any of the rooftop additions on the historic buildings. The only thing that you are seeing and on the bottom right ghosted in is the new building itself. And all the other stuff that you see in the foreground is stuff on buildings next to us. From the south, there is some visibility of the bulkhead and the railing at the 6th floor. This is from that sort of triangle where 6th Avenue and Church Street meet. So you have a sort of open space where you're looking north. You can see on the bottom right that the elevator bulkhead is visible through the railing at the top of the new building. Moving over to the other side of the triangle, it's similar visibility where you're seeing the bulkhead and the railings at the 6th floor. And then last, from about a 15 to 20 foot span along Canal Street, 2 blocks to the north, there is visibility sort of past the post office of the side of the new building, the setback 6-story, and a little bit of the elevator bulkhead and 7-story penthouse. And I'll actually go back to this photo, I think, and end there and take questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions, commissioners? Any questions? Okay. Let's see if we have public testimony. We may come back with questions after that. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak on this item? Noting that there is not, I will turn it over to Gregory Kala to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one hand raised in the attendees list. So we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC finds this proposal generally appropriate, but we believe that the building should align with the 5-story cornice line of its neighbors, and the proposed 6-story should be set back. Additionally, we feel the applicant should explore a stronger horizontal element or cornice line at the base of the new building, for which the tax photo offers precedent. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I'm looking through the attendees list now, and I do not see any further hand raised. So I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 1 recommends denial until the following is confirmed. No detaching the facade from the floors, no removal of all windows, no street walls higher than 75 feet, no visibility of any new floors, and minimal visibility of new roof bulkheads. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to the comments?
Sure. With regard to the stronger horizontal that HDC mentioned, that may have been made stronger in the latest revision, so I'm not sure if they saw an earlier version. That certainly can be explored, but that was very much a design intent to make that 2nd-story horizontal stronger and to have it wrap the corner as a sort of separation from the retail to the upper floors. Regarding the community board, we were surprised that they voted to deny. The resolution that they approved at the committee was to approve with some conditions. Most of the conditions that they mentioned had to do with an earlier proposal to create balconies on the cast iron building, and that was abandoned. So I think we've met most of their conditions, and like I said, they originally voted to approve with conditions. Regarding the height, as we pointed out, and I think we can see in some of these photos, and we showed previously, There is very much a variety of height within this district in the say 4 to 7 story range. Our building at 6 stories is very consistent with both historic buildings in the district and particularly historic buildings at the corners, and also consistent with buildings that the commission has approved in recent years and going back decades.
And in this view, can you use the pointer that's there and just show us what we're looking at?
Just.
Oh, there's a long thin one. It's
Oh.
that one. It's better. Yeah.
So this is the side of the 6-story wrapping around to the front of the 6-story at this is a 6-story over 309 Church, and then this is the side of the 6-story of the new building. And then there's a little bit of visibility up there. You're just catching the 7th-story penthouse there. As I said, this is, you know, on Canal Street. You really have to stop on Canal Street, just west of Canal Plastics to get this view. So it is very fleeting.
It's fleeting. It's a busy intersection, and you don't really see the new building in this view, or just a very small piece of the historic building.
By the time you see the new building, most of the visibility of what's happening above really gets blocked.
All right, and there's something taller in the background.
We have taller in the background, and then that taller loft building in the foreground, which is on this double wide building is on our block. So that's what starts to block the visibility as you move further east on Canal.
Okay, and can you go back to page 40? And just in that view, I think it's 40, where you catch just a bit of the setback penthouse, you're really seeing the cornice, which is wrapping around from the main building, and then the glass railing.
Yeah. And this would be the limestone facing on the setback 6-story piece, which is the same cornice that wraps from here and comes around.
Yeah.
And then glass railing south.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the decision to wrap the building around and namely the cornice onto the additions on the historic buildings, as opposed to just treating them sort of architecturally different?
I think it's largely it's obviously a design decision. Most of the visibility of those cornices on the setback buildings are from the setbacks themselves. So I think it was really considering the design from the tenant view above. I don't think that there is a necessity to have, I don't think there's a physical necessity to have that wrap. It could be, I think that this cornice needs to return. Having this cornice just die right there would give an odd feeling and make it feel not 3-dimensional. So certainly this cornice returning could then terminate at the 6th floor penthouse, and that would simplify, I guess, a little bit the fascia that you're seeing there.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other thought? Yes, Commissioner Chu.
Yeah, I have a question. The renderings in the deck, they're not consistent on the corner of the building. In some of the, if you go 2 slides previous to this, you see the corner column, the horizontals do not go around them on the upper floors, but all the other drawings and the renderings showed that horizontal continuing around on the upper floors. There, see that?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very big difference.
I will be honest that we had a lot of trouble with getting renderings to align up.
I know what that's like.
And sorry, we did not catch that. The what is shown in the drawings is correct. Sorry, the horizontal at the 2nd story will wrap around, and then the corner column, which is a much thicker column, and I think even thicker than is expressed here, continues straight up from the 2nd story up to the cornice at the top, with the horizontals then running from pier to pier. Oh. Sure. Yeah, so this is showing it correctly. Again, with a quite wide corner pier. And then the horizontals running between, and then the pier at the north side, terminating the transition from the limestone to the cast iron.
Okay.
Any other final questions? Yes, Commissioner Lutfi. Thank you.
Could you please go back to this Avenue of the Americas view? Because I don't quite understand. Is that page 41? I'm not sure that. So what, but that one, what exactly are we looking at here?
So, this is the view, this is, I think a Ralph Walker building, right? The 32 Avenue Americas building here on the left. This is Church Street. We constructed the mock-up obviously only on the cast iron building because gravity. So what we're seeing here is in green, the elevator bulkhead, and then in orange up here is the 7th-story setback and the glass railing. When you overlay what the new building will be at the corner, it blocks all of the visibility of that, with the exception of a very slight, so it's about a foot or so, 18 inches or so of the glass railing, which is on top of the 6-story setback at the cast iron building at 309 Church.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
All right, other questions? All right, I think we're ready to move to our discussion then. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion for this proposal to demolish the existing 2-story commercial building, taxpayer, and to construct a new limestone clad building with a 6-story street wall. The applicant has shown some variety in heights on these streets as well as the larger neighborhood. The building will feature some new minimalist storefronts, French doors, glass railings, halo lit signage. So those are all things that we should discuss. And at the top there, the 6th floor will wrap around onto the historic buildings, setback locations to create penthouses. And then there will be another 1-story on top of those. And finally, for the historic building, we need to discuss the replacement of missing architectural features with fiberglass. For example, the capitals on the storefronts at the ground floor. And then the removal of the later fire escape on the Church Street facade. The earlier, more historic fire escape on the Walker Street facade will be retained and restored. So we'll need to have comments for both of those buildings. And we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Goldblum, would you like to start this one?
Sure. Thank you. I think that the restoration work on the 2 buildings generally looks prudent and appropriate. I think that the wide mullion at the center of the Walker Street building is acceptable. It's a little unusual, but I think it's okay. We do see those wide mullions sometimes when they were trying to imitate a casement or something. So I think that that's okay. I think the new building, first let me say the setbacks and rooftop stuff looks minimally visible and doesn't seem particularly disturbing or inappropriate in any way. Actually, the only thing I'll just say is like the staff should just consider on the restoration whether the fiberglass columns at the ground level are going to weather or age or do anything in a way that would distinguish them over time from the cast iron that they are replacing. And if that's deemed to be not the case, then all good. I just worry that something that's really close down to your eye might look a little different in 5 years and might be funky. The the proposed building, I think, is generally, it kind of follows our cast iron recipe. And as such, seems appropriate. The only thing that's kind of, there's two things that are kind of odd about it. I'm not sure they make it inappropriate, but I think they're kind of odd. The corner pier at the corner of the building is so fat and heavy compared to the side pier adjacent to the existing buildings. It kind of makes, it's like, is the building trying to say that it's really one building? All three components are kind of one building, and there's like a rhythm that reads across, and therefore you don't make a stop, a caesura at the ends, or not. I mean, I think it reads very much as its own building, even though internally it's not. So I don't know, I just find that kind of asymmetry at the framing to be odd. And I would suggest that if they wanted to look at kind of shaping that big fat column at the corner such that maybe it kind of recognized the symmetry, but kept the weight. There might be a way, there's lots of ways that corners happen that might give it some more finesse. And I do agree with the HDC's comments about the frieze over the storefronts. I think that they are a bit light. And like that sign band, there's obviously some fudge there that they could probably play with staff if others agreed with that. The only thing I would also add is, like, I recently saw a project where they did the glass rail with the metal cap. And the metal cap is so bright, it's like having a little neon pinstripe in your eye. And so it's just important that they, look at that with staff. And if it's going to be a metal cap, that maybe they want to have that same bronze color. I think that the cornice was noted in the staff comments as being a bit clunky. I think it's true, but I don't think it's enough to tip it into being inappropriate. They might look at that with staff, but I mean, in general, it follows our recipe and is pretty appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg.
So I, as a long-term resident of Tribeca, remember the Carolina Cab Company, which had real character, but that's all gone. In general, I think this is appropriate. I think that I can approve it as is. I would note one thing that is not in our purview: the bathrooms don't seem to meet handicapped accessibility code, and the architect should check that, but that isn't an issue for us.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chen.
Yeah, as the previous comments, this is pretty much follow to our recipe. Although, starting with the fire escapes, has always been known that I have a preference for keeping back the fire escapes, but here they kept one and not dispose of the other. I do see that the staff comment as HDC's comment are valid, and I think Michael's observation has been pointed out on the corner column. The applicant may want to take a look at it.
Thank you. Commissioner or Vice Chair Bland.
Yeah, I think I have an outlier position. I think the new building dominates and subsumes its two historic neighbors too much. I can accept the planning of it all interior well, but I think maybe the building is too high. And I think it's sort of like puts a cap on the whole thing and homogenizes it all a bit too much. So, as I said, an outlying position. I'm not sure that this will have traction, but if I were designing it, I would take that top floor either off or move it way back so that it doesn't dominate so much. To me, this is a kind of an almost triple floor building, but not quite. And I think the detailing could be triple floor up a bit and do a better building. Although it's not a bad building now, so I don't want to slam it in any way. I just think it could be tightened a little bit. otherwise, the details that we talked about a minute ago, I think, I think the issue of the fiberglass, column caps down low is an issue like staff thinking about too. I think that's enough.
Commissioner Lutfi?
Well, I think I'm in the slightly outlier category too. Look, overall, this is a fine building. Now, we recently had a corner building and we were talking about in a very important location. And we were talking about, could it be high? Could the surrounding buildings and the street take it? I think this is a trickier situation because it doesn't as much like sit very comfortably at the base, and then it doesn't go high. So the fact that it ends where it does is almost makes you pause. And I think inadvertently, this building, in an effort to be simple, it's for a variety of reasons, it's standing out a little more and it's competing. You can't really see it in this perspective, but it's competing more with what is an actually gorgeous block. So and again, I don't want to say that this is a bad project. I think it needs a little tweaking. I also feel like it would do better to come down in height a little bit. And I'm very happy that there's not a big visibility issue here. I don't know what would happen in terms of that. I think that Michael made a lot of good comments in terms of the mullion and the corner. And I think while there's been a wonderful effort and need to, based on the kind of project it is, to align the floors, I do think that one thing that we'd like to do when buildings are combined is make sure that they are reading all the way from top to bottom as being distinct. So if you could please just make sure there is a distinction at the top, even if, in my opinion, in the best of all possible worlds, the building came down a little bit. I also happen to agree that there's not as much, there needs to be a little more work done at the base. It's just a little bit too plain and unresolved. And there, from a sign, in terms of the buildings next to it, it should speak a little more, but in a modern way, to the spacing between the signage and the bottom. Looks like you want it to be a gallery, and hopefully it will be. But I think that would require a little more attention.
Can we find another image that shows more of the block? Because I think that there are buildings on both these streets that are the same height as this.
Yeah, but there are. But because stylistically, the other buildings are of the same period, they all kind of blend and meld together, and then they go up and down. And so the two buildings to the left so the buildings immediately to the left are lower, and then there's a pop-up. And I just think the rhythm's a little off, and because of the lines of the building, it's inadvertently standing out a little more than it needs to. And it's, it's a big building in terms of its width.
All right, Commissioner Chu.
So I agree with a lot of my fellow commissioners' comments. I think that the general approach, I'm in agreement with in terms of its simplicity. The design is really so minimal, it's almost neoclassical, but it's not quite. One thing I will note about the detailing is because it's so simple, you almost expect it to be Dutchman's solid stone pieces, but in fact, it will be clad. And so I do think that the detailing needs to be heightened because I know that corners will be sharp miters. There's a lot of little scale detail that just could be added to it. I agree with Commissioner Bland's comment on overall the general approach. I'm in agreement with, but there's little things that need to be studied more. My question about the corner actually to me is extremely important. I find that the other half of the renderings that show the horizontal turning the corner are more appropriate to me. If I looked at most cast iron corner buildings, and Michael brought this up earlier, I read them as a singular corner building that makes its place and it makes its statement. It's a corner building, and that's a wonderful thing to have a corner building. And I think that bringing those horizontals around the bend help it with sit better in its fabric. Otherwise, two elevations as opposed to one three-dimensional building. That's a small detail, but I do think it helps break down what otherwise is too massive of a corner column that it stands out to me too much. The top, it's interesting because I do find that I'm looking at it from a proportional perspective, as Michael did earlier. I think that the top, contrary to some of the other comments, I almost feel like the top is maybe too timid. It seems a bit confused because it's shorter, but then the cornice is quite prominent, so it's doing both. I also don't necessarily feel like it needs to overhang off the corner lots on the sides or the two adjacent existing building lots. The tradition of most of the lots here are that they have a lot, they don't overhang. So you often see the sides of buildings there. I do think it confuses it a little bit because it then overhangs the two side buildings, and I feel like it's trying to merge them, but it's not at all because the facades are very distinct from one another. I think that's a minor thing that could be studied. I do think the materiality of the limestone should continue the whole way back, as I saw a little piece of another material on the corner view. The penthouse and its mass is acceptable, appropriate to me. Don't really see it that much. I don't think the corners should be the same. The corners on the three buildings. I think that's about it. It's really just a level of detail that needs to be added. Also, the base, the way it hits the ground seemed too simplistic. A little bit of detail here will call out what I'm looking at in the fabric around is nice play of shadow work. I really appreciate the depth that this design has, though. That's one thing I was very happy to see. The depth of the glass to the outer face of the stone is really what makes this really work to me. And then the detailing is adjustments, but that really gives the facade a prominence and appropriate to the historic fabric, which has a lot of depth and small scale shadows.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Master.
Okay. I'm going to start by saying that, yes, it is appropriate to demolish this non-contributing two-story building and to replace it with the six-story building. And in my opinion, the height and massing are appropriate given the varied height and massing of this streetscape block and historic district. I think that I'm glad that they're doing a lot of the restoration of the historic fabric on the original cast iron building. I think the mullion, the wide mullion is acceptable. The removal of the fire escape is also acceptable as they're retaining the other one. And I also agree with a lot of the comments that Michael and Stephen had said. My only slight suggestion would be on the first floor retail ground floor. I think that it needs a little bit more finesse or detailing, but I think that can be worked out with staff. other than that, I find it appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
I'm going to focus primarily on the corner. So this is a building that dominates the corner. If you look at the existing building, the former building, you see how quiet it is when it turns the corner. This building, because of the column going all the way up, coming up to the coping, it's very strong, and the base. And this column, this strong column, the way it hits the cornice, it just doesn't work quite well. And the base, the way the base comes along, the urban level base comes along and hits the column, it's very weak. So that whole transition from the urban base, the column, and doesn't quite hit. And I think the cornice has to be stronger. And if the way it hits the column, if that's really tight, then that corner becomes so strong. And that's, I think the goal of the design was to make that corner strong. And they should spend some time articulating that detail.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I agree. Just because Commissioner Jefferson just commented on the cornice and looking at slide 44, I very much agree that the cornice is actually light, in terms of what you would see historically in a corner building like this, in this particular building. And I think it needs to be strengthened. I also feel that the sort of odd detail of it going around over the penthouses on the other building is distracting, and I think it needs to focus on being part of its building. And I think it shouldn't continue over those adjacent buildings, existing buildings. So to go back, I definitely think the demolition is appropriate. I think that the bulk and massing is appropriate. I think for a corner building in this district that this height is perfectly acceptable for me. I think that the treatment of the windows and the sizing of them going up is well done and appropriate. The other issue I have besides the cornice is actually the storefronts, where I feel that the character is rather undefined. And I agree with some of Commissioner Chu's comments in general about that, because it's a very simple building and it could use some more detailing to relate it more to the district. On the fire escape, I'm okay with removing it. I did want to ask, I was trying to take a look at the picture that fire escape is not special, is it, staff? There's nothing special about it.
I think that was the plainer of the two, the later one, and the one that's the older with some of the decorative detailing is one that will remain.
So in that case, yes, it would be appropriate. And that's it. Those are my comments.
Okay. All right. So I think where we are is we have a majority of commissioners in support of a proposal for a 6-story street wall here. But we've heard a number of comments having to do with details, and these are refinements and sometimes things that we can sort of hand off to the staff. But I think in this case that there are a number of details that cumulatively could have an impact on the design. And so I'd like you to take some time and think about some of the commissioners' comments about how to articulate the detail, particularly at the cornice, the corner pier, how those pieces connect to each other and connect to the base, and then the storefront detailing, in addition to some of the other comments that we've heard. And I think with those refinements, the storefront proportions and detailing, and with some of those refinements, we'll have you back and as soon as you're ready. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move to the next item.
Right. The next item is public meeting item number 2, LPC 24-02237, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the borough of Manhattan, block 532, lot 77 Bleecker Street in the NoHo Historic District. This is an altered group of Italianate style buildings originally designed by Griffith Thomas, Henry Fernbach, and others, built between 1866 and 1883, and subsequently combined and reconstructed as an apartment complex designed by Avinash K. Malorta in 1979 to 81 after a fire. And the application is to replace windows. This item was also previously read into the record as being presented for the first time today. Staff will present the proposal after we open the hearing.
Okay, so we need to open up the public hearing. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to open the hearing?
So,
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that motion?
second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we may begin. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lacey Williams, Preservation Staff. The item before you is for 77 Bleecker Street, located on the north side of the street between Mercer Street and Broadway in the NoHo Historic District. This is an altered group of buildings with street frontages on both Mercer Street and Broadway, built between 1866 and 1883, and later combined and reconstructed as an apartment complex following a fire in 1979 to 81. The scope of work is to replace windows, and it is limited to the Mercer Street facade shown here on the left. This is the designation photo showing the window assemblies that exist currently. They feature non-historic fixed and sliding windows. We do not have a 1940s tax photo for this facade, but based on the age and style of the building, the historic windows would likely have been wood multi-light double hung at the upper floors and storefront infill at the first floor. The proposal is to replace the dark gray finished metal window assemblies in kind, with the exception of changing the operation of the sliding windows to be casement windows. And this is a ground floor assembly and a typical upper floor assembly. These are the typical section details. The proposal is before you for the operation, configuration, and material of both the first floor assemblies and the upper floor windows. And the applicants are available virtually to answer any questions.
All right, commissioners, do we have any questions? All right, let's see if we, yes, Commissioner.
What is the ground floor use?
Residential.
It's residential at the ground floor.
Yes, yes.
Could the speaker identify themselves
Oh,
by
I'm
name?
sorry. This is Doug Lane, Lane Engineering. And also on the presentation is Anshul Kapoor of Lane Engineering.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
All right, so, and this building has been residential for some time. It's part of an early conversion, and so their proposals to sort of match the existing windows and including at the ground floor. All right, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Noting that there isn't, I will turn it over to Gregory Collett to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. If you would like to speak on this item, please click the raise hand button right now. Okay, I do not see any hands raised for this item. So I will note for the record that Manhattan Community Board 2 recommends denial of the application for installation of casement windows and that the replacement be of double hung windows in a historic design appropriate building. And with that, I'll link back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to turn to the applicant, Mr. Lane, and ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard from the community board.
Yes, so on this facade, we have sliders that were installed during the conversion after the fire. And we're trying to return back to that look, not to move forward with a new operation. There is a concern that we've had and we've expressed that the casement windows are energy efficient and meet the energy code. I have not found any double hung windows that do meet the energy code, and that is a concern for us and for the building in light of local law 97. We are going convert to a double hung window on the Broadway side, which was a separate application. But we would like to maintain the casement operation versus the existing slider operation here and not convert over to a double hung arrangement. It also should be noted that these are very tall windows, and it becomes extremely expensive to install double hungs.
Okay. This, when was the building converted?
I believe 1981, I think it was completed.
All right. Any other questions, commissioners? All right, let's move to our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the hearing is closed, and all right, these are buildings that were altered and combined in a conversion, an adaptive reuse in 1981. The application is to replace what was installed at the time, which I guess were sliders, with new casement windows in the same configuration, but they would operate differently. And also to replace the ground floor windows with new, again, residential casement windows to reflect that use of that ground floor. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Ginsburg.
So,
The energy.
I think the casement are fine, and they are better from an energy perspective because the sliders are horrible and other things aren't much better because of the air leakage, not because of the UV value. So I think that's fine, and I would actually say when they look at the other facades, that you can take awnings or hoppers and make them look like a double hung, and they'll be much more energy efficient, and I'd encourage them to do that. So I think this is appropriate.
Okay, thank you. And I think, you know, it sort of also reflects its earlier conversion. Commissioner Chen?
I must apologize, stepped out to the restroom at that time, so I would like to hear the rest of the commissioners.
Okay, Vice Chair Bland?
I agree with Commissioner Ginsburg's analysis, and can support it as appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Foxy has stepped out. Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I think this is appropriate.
All right, Commissioner Master?
Yeah, I agree. Appropriate.
Commissioner Jefferson? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Chapin?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus of those of us here. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make the motion?
With pleasure. With regards to LPC 24-02-237, 77 Bleecker Street, NoHo Historic District. An altered group of Italianate style buildings originally designed by Griffin Thompson, Henry Fairback, and others built between 1866 and 1883 and subsequently combined and reconstructed as an apartment complex designed by Avanish K. Malorta in 1979-81 after a fire. Application is to replace windows. I note the building scale, style, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenwich Village Historic District. I find that most of the windows were replaced when the building was altered and combined as an apartment complex after a fire. Therefore, the work will not alter or eliminate any existing historic fenestration patterns. That the proposed configuration, metal material, and casement operation of windows at the altered first floor, which features a range of bulkhead heights, reflects the building's adaptive reuse to residential and is consistent with the changes that occurred when it was initially converted. That the proposed configuration and details at the upper floors featuring paired casements with and without transoms and profile brick mold will be in keeping with the scale, articulation, and basic proportions of the historic fenestration and will harmonize with window configurations of other buildings in the complex. and that the proposed dark gray finish for the windows will harmonize with the facade and be in keeping with finishes typically found at buildings of this type and age.
Right, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
Second.
John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bland. Aye. Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi. Commissioner Master.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, so that's approved. Thank you. And we'll move to the next item.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'll move to our public hearing agenda. First is public hearing item number 1, LPC 23-11110, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 208, Lot 307, 212 Columbia Heights in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. This is an Italianate style row house built in 1860. The application is to construct a roof deck and install a door.
Good morning and thank you very much. Michael Ingwe Architecture. Here to talk about 212 Columbia Heights. There are a few things that we're looking at today. One is a rear door, and then the other one is a visible roof deck from the rear. The rear elevation shows both clearly, which is the no, there. I'll use a pointer, but it's okay. Maybe I could use a mouse. I'll just describe it. So the door is within the existing opening, but we're lowering the sill a bit. There is no door leading out to that balcony right now. And then the roof deck is designed in a way where it aligns with the roof of the neighboring property. We'll take a look at that in a second. So here is the door itself. It'll be a wood door painted black. No change to the head or sides of the windows, but we're lowering the sill to floor height. The roof deck, as we start to look at it, we're looking at it, there's just a lot of precedence. This is on the promenade, and there are a lot of roof decks that are highly visible. Most of the roof decks go right back to the rear wall of the house, up and down the promenade. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the precedence, but we start to get into the area around our building, which is right here. And again, just a lot of roof decks, a lot of rear decks, a lot of visible decks. Besides our house, most of them are pretty straightforward. Our house, the lower roof deck, has quite a bit of ornamentation. This gives you a sense of our building on the roof. You can see that the building to our left or building to our south was at the same height in the rear, but they had raised their rear wall, probably prior landmarks. And the right, to the right of us or the north of us, we have a really large roof deck and rear decks that protrude about 12 feet to the back. This is, I'm actually going to go to the next one. I'll go back. This is the mock-up of what we're proposing. And this is a photo montage, kind of go back and forth a few times. You can see it from all 3 angles. And the way it's being designed is we are aligning with the building next to us. If the building next to us had and will do a roof deck, their roof deck would be at the height of their roof. Our roof deck is at a similar place. You can see it best. I'm going to go backwards. I promise to go forward fast. You can start to see the building to our right or to our south. You can see the height, so you can start to see what sets the height of these. And again, back to that mock-up. And then you can start to see a little bit more in the renderings, both the context of the different decks that are around us and the design. There is a bulkhead that is visible from Brooklyn Bridge Park, which is pretty far away, but still visible. Not visible from the front. And we pulled it back enough to not be visible from the rear. But this gives you some detailing. The bulkhead will be gray the windows will be black. The rail will be black. Most of the prominent rails are black, and there'll be no wood cap or metal cap. It'll all just be black. Here's a floor plan of that. And then here's a building section, which also kind of describes what we're doing a little bit better. I'm sorry, I'm glad we looked at the section. We're also raising a few of the flues next door to us to be 3 feet higher than our bulkhead, which I failed to mention earlier. I'll go back to the. Actually, I'll go back to these. I'll describe it best. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners?
Could we just, excuse me, sorry. Could we just please go back to the visibility on the rear again? I just want to make sure I understand that.
Yeah, we've got some good photos that show it. So when we have to have Beverly zoomed in, but we're standing, the top right picture, we're standing in Brooklyn Bridge Park.
Okay.
And when you're standing in Brooklyn Bridge Park, you can see the top edge of our bulkhead. I think it's really hard to see, but you can see it. It's possible. You start to look at the, I'm just gonna, can I walk over? No.
The only thing is
We're on Zoom and they can't pick you up in this. We can try speaking very loudly and we have.
The mouse.
No, actually, Mike, there's a pointer there along, not that one, the long thin one is a better one.
Oh, I missed it.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice, thanks. Sorry. So you can start to see the mock-up that's still up right now. And you can start to see that. It's basically starting right at the roof line of the building next door. And then this is the photo montage. Photo montage is maybe a little heavier than it should be, but you can start to see where that is.
Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
Can you lower the deck? If we lowered the deck, two things would happen. Give you the sense tonight. If you guys don't mind, I'm just going to go straight to the building section. There are two things that there are two reasons the deck is at the height. Come on. Sorry, user error. There you go. So there are two reasons why the deck is where it is. The deck next to us, which is ghosted in here, is at a height that even if you're standing on our deck, your head would just be above where that deck is. So the deck next to us really looms over us. The deck is also right at the level that you come out of the bulkhead, and we're pulling the bulkhead back so you can't see it. So coming straight out. It's also set at the height of the building next to us. So if the building next to us which raised their rear of their building. So if the building next to us ever did a roof deck, the two buildings next to us ever did a roof deck, they would be basically at this height. So that's what kind of set the height of this.
But there's no, if you wanted to, or if we wanted to, there's nothing physically preventing you from lowering the deck.
Yeah, we could actually have taken the first 3 feet and lowered it and then gone back up and then raised it. You'd still see but to be clear on that, because we looked at that, you would still see the rail. You'd still see the first piece of steel, which you see in a lot of different pieces. What you wouldn't see is just a little bit more on the bottom. The negative here as well, the building, I mean, almost all these buildings on the promenade have these roof decks. Once a building next to us puts a roof deck up, we're set down like 3 or 4 feet from where that roof deck is. So for us, contextually, I totally understand the precedent issue here, but I don't know that it fits with the precedent of most other buildings because of the fact that the building next to us has raised their roof already, and basically, if they put the roof deck on, would be at the site. Sorry, I'm rambling.
No, that's fine. That's helpful. Thank you. But just how far is it set back from the plane of the rear facade?
It's in line with the rear facade, but there's a large bay on the, let's go back to this one. You can see it in plan.
Okay.
It runs straight. It doesn't run the rear brick of the building in this case goes in this direction. We ran it straight. And the point I would make is on the rear facades and the balconies in the heights on the promenade, almost all of these rear decks are at the rear facade.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Let's move to public testimony, and we may have more questions afterwards. Judy Stanton.
We stand in for the Brooklyn Heights Association. We do not support the roof design, deck design as proposed. We think the gap between the roof and the deck is too big. This gap detracts from the appearance of the building as seen from the promenade. The building's rear facade and ironwork are beautiful and well preserved, and it would be a shame to diminish that by adding an unattractive top. We think the deck should be lowered to the level of the bulkhead landing, and the deck should be pushed in further from the edge of the roof. We think the rest of the proposal is appropriate. The view of the backs of the Brooklyn Heights houses is an important characteristic of the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. We are sympathetic to the applicant's desire to enjoy their own roof and its harbor's views. We understand why an owner would want to minimize the obstruction from the oversized and inappropriate pre-designation porch on the building neighboring to the north. However, we think this proposal puts too little emphasis on preserving the public's views from the promenade within the district. We are also concerned about the precedent that this proposal would set for future roof decks sitting too high on top of other houses facing the promenade. We would not want to see a kind of rooftop arms race where each building tries to have its deck go a little higher than its neighbors to get a clear view of the Manhattan skyline. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there anyone else in the room who would like to speak on this item? Noting that there isn't, I'll turn it over to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a few hands raised on the attendees list. So first, we will be hearing from Christina Conroy from the Victorian Society of New York. Christina Conroy, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now founded in New York City in 1966, the Victorian Society in America is dedicated to fostering the appreciation.
I'm sorry. Could you speak a little louder, perhaps get closer to your microphone?
Sure. And actually, I had trouble hearing your live speakers on Zoom, so you are having some audio problems today again. Okay, so good morning. Founded in in New York City in 1966, the Victorian Society in America is dedicated to fostering the appreciation and preservation of our 19th century and early 20th century heritage. The New York chapter promotes preservation of our historic districts, individual and scenic landmarks, interiors, and civic art. Now, when we first saw the presentation for 212 Columbia Heights, we were reminded of another application heard at the October 31st, 2023 public hearing. Now, both the 212 Columbia Heights and the 183 Amity Street are single-family houses with rear yards and balconies on several levels. Both rear facades are visible from public spaces. Both applicants included changes to window openings and the construction of a roof deck, and both roof decks will be visible from public spaces. But there is a big difference between these two applications. The rear facade and rooftop addition at 183 Amity Street will only partially be visible looking down an alley on Pacific Street. The rear facade and rooftop addition on 212 Columbia will be fully visible, not only from the promenade, but in all likelihood from Lower Manhattan. We also note that at the public meeting for 183 Amity, the commission made its approval conditional on the applicants moving the proposed roof deck back from the primary facade to a location where it would not be visible from the street. The Victorian Society supports the proposed modifications to the window opening to install a door opening to an existing front floor balcony. The work will not require the removal of a significant amount of historic masonry and will be partially shielded from view by the balcony railing, but we do not support the construction of a roof deck in its present location. We find that it looms too close above the rear facade of its historic bay window, as shown on LPC 9. We ask that you follow the precedent set on Amity Street 7 weeks ago and require the applicant to move the proposed deck back to a location where it will not be so prominent. We suggest aligning the westernmost section of the deck with the existing chimneys. You can see in the photos of the rear facade that the chimneys aren't visible. This is also shown in the section on LPC 13. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Gregory Doniker. Gregory Doniker, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. So please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Gregory Doniker, speaking on behalf of the board of the Riverview Condominium at 183 Columbia Heights. We object to the height of the proposed bulkhead for 212 Columbia Heights. While the visibility of the proposed bulkhead, chimney flute extensions, and deck railing as presented as minor from the promenade, we understand this proposed addition will partially obscure New York Harbor water views from our building and from neighboring historic buildings. In particular, the planned structure will obstruct at least our views of another historic structure, the Statue of Liberty. We also call the Commission's attention to an apparent discrepancy in the mock-up photos on page 11 of the presented materials. Photo 5 does not appear to include the full mock-up structure that is currently in place. If you look carefully at the right-hand side of photo 4 on that page, there is an additional horizontal bar extending above the east edge of what we presume is the intended bulkhead mock. That might represent the intended height of the access ladder, but it's not visible in the primary bulkhead mock-up photo 5, and we're unclear whether that additional height was included in remaining sightline photos, or even whether such an access ladder and its additional height is strictly needed. So in summary, main objections here is the height, though we share the concerns we've heard from others. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I've promoted you to panelist. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC supports the door as proposed, but we feel the proposed roof deck inappropriately overhangs the rear cornice line and should be pushed back. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised in the meeting, so I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends approval. And I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to ask if you'd like to respond to the comments we've heard.
Thank you very much. I think we're trying to figure out what the discrepancy was with the mock-up. I think they may be looking at the fact that we at one point did not have the flues in our mock-up and now have the flues in the mock-up. That was but in terms of just the heights, we know why we're here. We know it's controversial to have a roof deck start at this height. The reminder on this particular project, which makes it in our minds different than others, is our roof rear cornice is at the original height. The cornice of the house next to us has been raised 3 feet. Almost all the other roof decks on the promenade go right to the rear facade. When they install a roof deck, their roof deck will be at that height. That's where we set our roof deck. So I don't know that this is a real precedent for situations in buildings that don't have both the looming roof deck to our north and the condition of the raised rear parapet to the building to our south. But fully appreciate both points of view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? All right, let's move to our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you make a motion to close the hearing? So thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Would you second the motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion to for this application for this building facing where its rear facade faces the promenade, which is typical of all of the houses on this street. And there have been alterations, including balconies and decks and turning windows into doors that the commission has approved. And so we're looking at, again, converting a window to a door and installing a roof deck. And there's been much discussion about the height of that deck. So Vice Chair Bland, would you like to start this one?
Well, I think it's important to establish for all of you, if you don't already know this, that many of these additions and terraces and extrusions on the back of these extraordinary mansion buildings will the commission. Particularly, I think the one that you're seeing here on the left, on the right hand side, never would have been approved by the commission, but they've become just part of the gestalt of filling the back of these houses, which at one time purportedly were the sea captains' houses, and their gardens went down to the waterfront, and the ships were out there. Et cetera, et cetera. So there is already an established gestalt, as I said, of additions and strange appurtenances on the back, which to my mind, maybe I've been looking at it for 52 years, so it's just part of the scene. It's hard to almost critique it from me. So that argues that something could be there, I think. But the question, I think, that the Brooklyn Heights Association testimony provides is instructive for me. And that is this issue of the dimension, the height between the deck and the roof. It's an awkward dimension. Now, will you see it much from the promenade? Perhaps not, because you're looking up at it, but nonetheless, I think it's an awkward thing. And in fact, many of these were not critiqued or approved by us. Does not mean that we should not critique and approve now. So, long story, but I think I could support this if it would push back. Well, that would also be good. And I think the issue of trying to outdo the neighbor, see past the neighbor is really not part of our issue. So I think pushing it back and or lowering it somehow would be an acceptable order.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Lutfi.
Yeah, thank you, Fred, for those comments, and also Judy. I have to agree.
Okay, Commissioner Chu.
Agreed with Commissioner Bland's comments.
All right, Commissioner Master.
Yeah, I want to go back, and there's also a window opening. I think that was being converted to a door. I think that's appropriate. And I also agree with our resident Brooklyn Heights expert, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Jefferson.
Pushback.
Okay. Commissioner Chapin.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Bland.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum.
Me too.
Commissioner Ginsburg. And Chen. Okay. So I think we all are in agreement on this one, and we'll do an approval of both the window to the door and for a roof deck, but to study pushing it back and or lowering it in consultation with the staff. Vice Chair Bland, would you make the motion?
Columbia Heights and Brooklyn Heights Historic District. This is an Italianate style row house built in 1860. The application is to construct a roof deck and install a door. I recommend, first of all, I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features which contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. I recommend approval, however, with a modification that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the work will not be visible in conjunction with the front facade of the house from any public thoroughfare, that the expansion of a single masonry opening and replacement of a 2/2 double hung window with the door at the visible rear facade will be a typical alteration at rear facades in this row and will not call undue attention to itself. That the raised metal flues will be seen from public thoroughfares above the roof line of the alternating pattern of the rear facades and thus projecting bays, thereby helping them remain a secondary presence. And that the new stair bulkhead will only be minimally visible from the Brooklyn Heights Promenade and fully visible only from a very large distance within Brooklyn Bridge Park. And that this extent of visibility will not detract from the or overwhelm any significant architectural or historic features of the building or landscape. However, I note that the proposed deck and railing raised several feet above the rear facade will be highly visible from the Brooklyn Heights Promenade and will overwhelm the roof line. Therefore, I recommend that the deck be lowered and or set back. So the visibility of the deck and railing is in keeping with other decks and railings visible from the Brooklyn Heights Promenade.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chen, would you second that motion?
Second.
John, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
10 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
All right, so it's approved with that modification. Please continue to work with the staff. Thanks. We'll move to the next item now.
Now move to public hearing item number 2, LPC 24-02517. Application for certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 1961, lot 6, 442 Waverly Place, aka 451 Clinton Avenue in the Clinton Hill Historic District. This is a one-story garage building, and the application is to construct it and install a roof deck. Reconstruct it and
Good morning. My name is Mohammed Bitatache from MB Architect. I'm presenting today this project for demolition of a one-story brick garage and construction of new one-story brick garage with a stucco and roof deck. This project is located in 442 Waverly Avenue. This is a part of the 451 Clinton Avenue lot. This is the garage is located in the rear yard. Most of the Waverly Avenue West area, they have those carriage houses associated with the mansions on Clinton Avenue. The garage was built on the 19th period, but was not very well maintained and has a lot of issues. That's why the owners decided to do a demolition and reconstruction to match the existing and to add the roof deck for the resident. This is the existing photo of the garage. We have here the historic tax photo showing the existing garage doors with glass windows and the entrance to the rear yard, which extend to the existing parapet. The time of designation, the garage doors were changed with the wood doors, solid wood doors, and also the rear door to the yard was changed to half wood and metal grill. The current photo show another thing with the garage doors. They installed the standard 7 by 8 feet doors, and they added a piece of 12-inch wood joist to cover the gap between on the opening of the glass. As I said, this garage has many problems with the structural stability. We have a report done by a structural engineer for the building and for the garage envelope, and they recommended the garage not to be used by the tenant. So it's been vacant for almost two years, and no one using it. On the back, you will see some of the bracing that they added to support and hold the garage. And the front also has shows the bracing of the garage with the parapet. There was an application that was done, I think back in 2018, because the parapet fell. So they fixed it, but still have like those issues with the bracing, and you can see the shoring inside for the structural wood joist. Here's some photos of the existing garages in the block that we were trying to match with our proposed. This regular garages and wood doors. There's some of them they have stucco, some of them they have like the one in the corner left. They added the roof deck recently, was not there before. Here's our proposed garage. We were trying to match the existing text photo that shows the garage doors with the glass windows. So we will be matching the size by 8 for roll-out gates. And for the side door, we align it with the lintel of the garage doors. We have a cable railing for the roof deck, and the furniture will be movable at the roof. For the material, the front elevation will be brick, and the other 3 elevation will be stucco, a traditional stucco masonry. So the size doesn't change a lot between the existing and the proposed. The height will be 11'7", where we have on the existing garage is 11'3" to the parapet, the top of that parapet. And we added it, the 36 inches to achieve the 42 inches required per code for the roof deck. It's the side elevations proposed and existing. With the section of existing and also proposed. The cable railing will be face mounted on the interior of the parapet, so it's not going to be on the top of the parapet. I can show you the detail on last page here. Yeah, if you see it there, the cable railing will be face mounted to the parapet. And we'll have those pedestal systems for the roof deck, and windows on the back. The doors will be double hand windows and middle doors for each space.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Yes, Commissioner Ginsburg.
This is the accessory garage for a 6-story building. Tenants.
Okay, how do you have handicapped access for the roof deck?
I believe it didn't come as an objection, but from our research, if we are proposing a roof deck for an accessible building, you will have to make the roof deck accessible. But for a garage, 1-story garage that's not accessible, it doesn't have to.
Okay, the only reason this comes in our purview is I'm not sure that's the correct interpretation. And if you have to put in an elevator because they don't allow lifts in new buildings typically, it will affect the design. So just flagging that as an issue, it seems to be what I'm picking up today. The other question is the garage heated or unheated?
Unheated.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, Commissioner Chapin.
The planters are temporary, they're movable.
Movable, yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. Let's see if we have any testimony. Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this item? Noting that there isn't, I will turn it over to Gregory Collett to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one hand raised in the attendees list, that being Christina Conroy from the Victorian Society of New York. Christina Conroy, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good morning, commissioners. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. You are still a little faint, and I would note that we have been able to hear other speakers, so it might be an issue with your audio. But just if you speak closer to the computer, it seems to work better.
All right, thank you. I shall project. Okay, so good morning, commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, the designation report for the Clinton Hill Historic District describes this building as a brick, 1-story, 5-car garage that is of no architectural interest. We believe that this remains an accurate assessment 40 years later. Based on the presentation materials, it appears that the building is to be demolished and reconstructed. Now, once a non-contributing building like this is demolished, it loses its grandfathered status in the historic district. Any reconstruction must be found appropriate using the same criteria as for any proposed new building. We cannot believe that the proposed structure, very similar to the existing one, would ever be found appropriate based on the Commission's usual criteria for new construction. We therefore urge denial of this application. There are many good examples of historic carriage houses in this district and on this very block that can be used to inform an appropriate new design. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised for this item. So I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends approval. And with that, I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay. So I'd like to turn back to the applicant and ask if you'd like to respond to the comments with, I think the comment was that, and we recognize the community board recommends approval, but we did just hear a comment that as a new building in a historic district, a garage is not appropriate. And maybe you want to speak to this streetscape in response.
Yeah, I mean, on the area they need parking, so we would like to keep offer parking again to the tenants. And as she said, that the existing building has no architectural interest, but we're trying to make it better, make it look, even if it looks the same, but it looks make it look better, and adding roof deck for residents. It's a good use of the space and for future. So it's not just for parking space. So it will be like accessory space that can be used by all the tenants.
Thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? All right, let's make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Master, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
And Commissioner Chu, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. So this is an application to reconstruct a garage. The applicant has presented that there are structural issues that have prevented the use of this garage for, I think, 2 years. And so it's really a structural approach with respect to thinking about it as a new building. I would note that Waverly Avenue is the street within this historic district that has many carriage houses and really does speak to the, carriage and later car service uses that uses that service the buildings that faced Clinton. And so I think one could think of as a reconstruction of the garage in that context, but I think that they are really trying to achieve maintaining their existing building, just given the structural concerns, need to reconstruct it. And that would include new doors that have transparent panels, similar to the historic photograph, a new door at the gate, and a cable wire railing at the roof. The furniture, which is movable, would not be under our purview. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Lefty, would you like to start this one?
Okay. I hope you can still hear me. What is a very appealing project. It's really, first of all, this is a non-contributing building, so I don't have a problem with taking it down. But this use was later, and I can appreciate the fact that the applicant would like to replace the use and then get a good more out of this structure by providing amenity to the I'm assuming it's the building in the background. Yeah. To the residents of the building. Thank you for fix that. So I think the applicant has done a very nice job with this project. It's true that Waverly has, it's like one of these streets that has a plethora of carriage houses, and many have been converted into garages or living spaces with garages. So I think what the applicant's done here is they've done something incredibly respectful and understated in terms of the materials, the brick and color. The railing on the top is very simple. This wonderful outdoor space amenity is one that is very flexible. Plants can be reconfigured if it's not working properly. I think it's terrific, and I would like to say that I can approve this as is. That said, Commissioner Ginsburg just raised an issue which I think the applicant should pay attention to, which is accessibility. And they either need to do that in conjunction with staff or on their own. Otherwise, I hope that this happens. I can approve it, and I'm very happy to turn this.
And should you need to do something that it has an effect on that would fall under our jurisdiction, for example, a bulkhead on the roof, that would be subject to our review. And so you'd have to come back to us for that. So just, you might want to really research that in your planning. All right, Commissioner Chu.
I would agree with the previous commissioner's comments. I think it is a great improvement. It feels like the intent was to just repair the existing, but because it was falling apart, you had to rebuild it. And that's pretty clear in this proposal. I think it's a handsome design. I think it does recall the historic, and it is very clean. My only comment, everything else I think is appropriate here, is I'm sorry to see the stucco on the sides. And the view is very frontal, but if I just walk a few feet to one side, I'm going to see that stucco return. I understand that it is a budgetary concern to put brick on sides. If the applicant wants to keep the stucco on the sides, I just ask that you return the brick, make it express as a plane with some kind of reveal, and then run the stucco, because I don't like that two-dimensional quality of the corners.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Master.
I agree with Commissioner Lutfi's comments. I think it's very modest, in scale and design and simple, and it's appropriate.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Can approve this project.
Commissioner Chapin.
Appropriate.
All right.
Appropriate. Go over the comments.
Okay. And
Even I agree.
I think we have a consensus. So, Commissioner Lutfi, would you make the motion?
In the matter of docket. Thank you. In the matter of docket, 24-02517, 442 Waverly Place, AKA 451 Clinton Avenue, Clinton Hill Historic District. A one-story garage. The application is to reconstruct the building and install a roof deck. I note that the existing garage is not a structure for which the Clinton Hill Historic District was designated. I recommend approval finding that the existing garage is not a structure for which the Clinton Hill Historic District was designated, that the replacement garage featuring brick cladding at the primary facade and stucco at the secondary facade will be simply designed and in keeping with other garages and carriage houses within the streetscape in terms of its massing alignment with the street wall and composition of the front facade elements, that the vehicular doors and side gate assembly will feature metal panels and detailing, which will recall garage infill and fencing typically found within the historic district, that the height, materials, and finishes of the proposed garage and side gate assembly will be compatible with the scale materials and finish palettes of neighboring buildings and fences, and that the simple design and minimal framing of the guardrails will give them a neutral secondary presence as seen above the garage and against a background of taller secondary neighboring buildings. Do I want to say anything?
Yes. Well, let's have them work with the staff on the treatment of the sidewalk.
Yeah, I would like to recommend that the applicant continue to work with staff on how two things, the treatment of the sidewalk and also sidewall. That's what I mean. The treatment of the sidewall in terms of how the brick may potentially turn the corner so that it seems a little more cohesive with the front facade.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chu, would you second that motion? Please call the vote.
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Vice Chair Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith. Did you hear enough? Yeah. Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
10 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Okay, so that's approved. Thank you. We'll move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 3, LPC 19-33252, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the borough of Brooklyn, block 1947, lot 24, 302 Lafayette Avenue in the Clinton Hill Historic District. This is an Italianate style row house designed by John S. King and William Vance and built circa 1873. The application is to legalize repaving the areaway and installing an areaway wall without LPC permits and to install a new railing.
Good morning, Commissioners. Winnie Child Preservation staff. This item is 302 Lafayette Avenue, located on the south side of Lafayette Avenue between St. James Place and Grand Avenue in the Clinton Hill Historic District. The application before you today is to legalize repaving the areaway and installing an areaway wall without a Landmarks Preservation Commission permit and to install a new railing. The building is part of a row of 7 Italianate style row houses built in 1873, ranging from 296 to 308 Lafayette Avenue. Here you can see the location of the building. The photo on the left is the 1940s tax photo where we can see that the historic fence has been replaced with a wall at the areaway. The photo on the right is a designation photo taken in roughly 1981. Both of these photos were dated May 2018. The photo on the left is of the conditions at 308 Lafayette Avenue. The photo on the right is of the conditions at 302 Lafayette Avenue before the work was done without a permit. As indicated in the designation report, the only remaining historic fence at this row is present at 308. At the time of designation, 302 had already lost the historic ironwork, including the fence at the areaway and the railings at the stoop. The photo on the left is a photo the LPC took in 2003 showing the areaway at 302 at that time, featuring a brownstone curb, concrete paving, and a planting area. The photo on the right is a photo the LPC took in 2018 after the work was done without a permit. Here you can see that the curb was replaced with a low area wall and the concrete paving within the areaway was replaced with dark gray and red brick paving. Here's a streetscape photo. The 7 buildings in this row is highlighted with the red box. The red arrow is showing the location of 302 at the center of the row. The next few slides are close-up photos of all of the buildings in the row. The photo on the left shows 308, where you can see the historic fence, the brownstone curb, and the dark gray and red brick paving. The photo on the right is 306. You can see a modern fence, a concrete curb, and red brick paving. The photo on the left shows 304. You can see the low brownstone wall with concrete paving. And the photo on the right is 302, again showing the low brownstone tinted stucco clad masonry wall and dark gray and red brick paving. The photo on the left is 300, showing a low concrete wall with cinder block paving. And the photo on the right is 298 and 296. And they both have a tall modern fence and concrete paving. Here are close-up photos of the areaway at our building. The image on the left is a photo montage showing the existing condition at the areaway with a drawn-in pipe railing that's being proposed at this time. The pipe railing is to be 10 inches above the areaway wall for a total height of 28 inches. The photo on the right shows a similar pipe rail installed at 92 St. James Place. And here are additional streetscape photos looking east and west of this row to show that there's a variety of treatment at the areaway wall. A couple more photos. Here are close-up photos of the existing paving at 308, where the owner got the inspiration for this work from. And here are similar paving in nearby areas. And this marks the end of my presentation. The applicant and owner is here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Winnie. Would you like to add anything at this time?
Thank you.
Excuse me, my name is Rosalind Human. I'm the owner of 302 Lafayette Avenue. I'm not a resident there. The work performed was done on an emergency basis. There had been construction across the street with the removal of the associated grocery store. It was demolished, and then new construction began and excavation. And I learned through my tenants that the block was overrun with rats. I had a year's contract with an exterminator who would come at anyone's call in the building, and he would treat it, declare that it was rats were gone, and then they'd be back within days. So we kept getting violations. He kept returning. I had to pay more. Eventually, I fired him, and but it was a block-long problem and surrounding blocks as well. The next exterminator could not get it under control either. There's still treatment on the block because of this situation. But they recommended that because it was a cement forecourt with a planting area, that the planting area was a problem. Also, the rats had tunneled under the cement. So the tenant on the bottom floor, the garden floor apartment, was losing their patience. They were tenants I valued. They had a baby, and they felt they were walking through, rat waste, and felt very, very uncomfortable. And then one day, the baby was now about 8 months old. This went on for well over a year, possibly 2 years of extermination. And they were very concerned about their child now crawling on the floor. And then a rat walked in when they were entering, or when their door was left open for a moment. So they gave me notice, unless I could fix the problem, they were leaving. I called Stone R Us, who is a landmark approved contractor, and asked him to bring me samples right away. He did that in 1 day, and we treated it as an emergency basis. He has done applications for me before. And so he brought me several samples. I picked these because of the colors were, I thought, compatible with those on the block, and especially with 308, which I admired for years, the brick pattern there. So he began the work immediately and recommended that we put back the little retaining wall, because it was even with the street, so people would throw garbage in there or go into the garbage cans or look for bottles and things. So it was always a problem with, trash going into the forecourt. So at any rate, I made an application for that little railing. I thought maybe that would be even better for keeping people out of the forecourt. But right now it appears that this, putting back the retaining wall, or that small wall, has done the trick. So that is less important now. I think that, the trash going in and out has been contained, but it would blow in from the street. People would drop stuff off there.
But you are proposing a railing, isn't that part of the application? I think historically it would have had a railing.
But none of them do. My neighbors each have a wall like that.
Right.
And mine had gone before I bought the building. And I would be, I thought it would be a good protection. But the wall itself is working, so that's less important to me now. So the forecourt is clean. No rats have burrowed since. They were burrowing under the stoop as well, and that was cement. And I lost my tenants. So the work was done very quickly
All right. But just to be clear, I'm going to ask Corey, Winnie, the railing at 308 is the remaining historic railing. So at the time of designation, while none of the other houses had railings, they did historically have railings, which is still evident at number 3.
Of the original fencing.
Yeah.
Which is,
yes,
very appealing. The property was owned by Franklin Thomas, who was the president of the Ford Foundation. I thought aesthetically it was the most beautiful on the block. I think now mine is, but because theirs is old brick. I also chose a brick that was a solid surface, not porous, so that it could be cleaned, but we lost the tree pit. That was in the forecourt.
All right. And so I see also in the tax photo that there are some walls at the area.
Yes.
Okay. Including yours. Okay. Commissioners, any other questions? All right.
And the only comment I have is sometimes the building department has issues with removing pervious surfaces. Just something to check, because on the residentials, they even count the square footage of how much is there.
Okay.
I did not hear the question.
Since you removed, you noted that you removed a tree pit, and Commissioner Chu was
Not a city tree pit.
no, within your area.
Within the forecourt, yeah,
Right,
that's
and-
where the tunneling would begin, and then they would burrow under the cement.
So Commissioner Chu was mentioning that the Department of Buildings might have something, a role in that, removal, in that they have regulations about removal of permeable surfaces. So it's a separate agency and something to think
Yes.
about. Okay. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak on this item? Okay, noting there isn't, I'll turn it to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have a couple of hands raised in the attendees list. So first, we will be hearing from Rosaria Sinisi. Rosaria Sinisi, I am promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
I represent Citizens for Responsible Neighborhood Planning involved in historic preservation in Clinton Hill and Fort Greene. We oppose this application to legalize unpermitted work on an areaway in the Clinton Hill Historic District, including areaway repaving, construction of a non-contextual wall, and an application to add a non-contextual railing atop that wall. The applicant has owned this rental property since 1985, also owns others in historic districts, and is not unfamiliar with LPC permitting procedures. Yet it chose to ignore those procedures, repave its areaway in multicolored brick, and install an inappropriate wall where other brownstones of the same date and on the same block, as well as elsewhere in the historic district, have bluestone areaways with original brownstone curbs bearing cast iron railings. Nothing, including rat infestation, forced the applicant to make these unpermitted changes. It could have left the property as it was, with a concrete areaway and a curb rather than a wall. The wall does not prevent rat entry, and cracked concrete could have been filled prior to application for an LPC permit, which is what other neighbors in the immediate area have done in response to rat issues. So the applicant is now instead attempting to justify its initial disregard of LPC's jurisdiction by citing two examples of other presumably unpermitted and non-contextual areaway and railing modifications, as well as photos of public pedestrian walkways in Park Slope and the Pratt Institute campus. Neither of the last two are brownstone areaways. These are appropriate for this building's period or even in the Clinton Hill Historic District. The letter we submitted to LPC on Friday shows before and after photos of another King and Vance brownstone areaway and railing on a house built 1 year after applicant's property. The owners of this house on the other side of applicant's block at 11 Clifton Place applied for an LPC permit. The bluestone areaway and curb were restored, and the prior non-contextual wrought iron fence was replaced with one of the same design as was originally used on the King and Vance houses in applicant's row, particularly on 308, as shown in applicant's photos. These before and after photos of 11 Clifton Place show the difference between compliance with historic district regulations and the disregard of same. CRNP thus recommends denial of this application to legalize an inappropriate incursion into the fabric of the Clinton Hill Historic District. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Next up, we will be hearing from Lucy Levine from the Historic Districts Council. Lucy Levine, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. So please state your name for the record and unmute your line. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Lucy Levine. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC supports this legalization, but we find the proposed pipe rail too simple in design and feel that a more decorative metal rail would be more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I do not see any further hands raised, so I will note for the record that we received a letter recommendation for approval from Brooklyn Community Board 2, as well as a letter from the Society for Clinton Hill that was shared previously. And with that, I'll bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to the comments we've heard? Yes, you may do so. Yep. Yeah, I mean, we recognize the community board recommended approval. the Historic Districts Council had a comment about the railing design, but otherwise supported it. And then the Clinton Hill Society.
Society for Clinton Hill.
Yeah, they had more extensive comments you might want to reference.
I just would like to reiterate that I hired a person who is approved by the Landmarks Commission to do work, to get permits. He has done this for me countless times before. I own more than one building. And it was the emergency situation. He was aware that the time he would lose, excuse me, in getting the permits and the threat of my tenant leaving or the threat to their child. So we treated it, and awfully sorry, treated it like an emergency situation, because to me, my responsibility is to those people who live in the building. I'm an extraordinarily responsible owner and get compliments from my tenants. And, I felt their child was at risk and they felt that way as well. Are there any specific questions?
Are there any final questions, commissioners? Yeah. Okay. So let's close the hearing and move to our discussion. Commissioner Lefty, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chu, would you second that motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The hearing is closed and we'll begin our discussion. So as we, I think we're very sympathetic to the situation. We ultimately have to make our determination based on whether or not we would have approved the work in the first instance. And we would consider in making that determination, the pre-existing condition, the existing conditions along the street, and think about how this relates to the historic and or existing context. And so as we noted, the buildings originally would have had ironwork on a curb with bluestone paving. Even by the 1940s, many of the houses had been altered, including your own, with walls and the ironwork removed and a variety of paving. In this case, I believe you had concrete in your areaway and non-historic paving and non-historic areaway perimeter. So the good thing is no historic fabric was removed in this alteration, but we would need to now consider its appropriateness in terms of its relationship to the house and the streetscape. Which again, now Winnie, I think that still the only railing that does exist, it's historic, is the one at 308. Others have simple picket rails and some have walls, correct? Okay. So we'll begin our discussion. Commissioner Chapin, would you like to start this one?
Yeah, sure. So just.
Streetscape photo is good.
Yeah. So just a note to the applicant that when you have an emergency situation, you should also call the Landmarks Commission and they will cooperate with you to address it, as well as your service provider who's doing your work, so that, you don't run afoul of commission regulations and end up with fines and so forth. Putting that aside for the moment, looking at this as whether we would approve it as as presented without, the work having been done. I think that from my point of view, the surfacing of the areaway is appropriate. I could approve that. And I think the wall is also, typical of some things that we find in this district and on the street. So I could also approve that. I think that the proposed, railing, which the applicant sounded a little uncertain if they were going to do it or not, but if they would work with the staff on the, appropriate railing, simple railing, that would also be fine. I think that's really all that's there. And, so I could basically approve this as presented with the condition they work with the staff on any railing that they install.
I agree. I think that
railing on top. It should probably move the staff to have it resemble or blend well with the historic railing and the other rounds of the block, just blend it some semblance of continuity.
Okay.
Also, it's important for the staff to help folks understand that using an approved contractor is something of a misnomer. The commission does not approve contractors, as far as I know.
No, there's no such thing.
Correct.
Hiring somebody who says he's a contractor who's approved by the Landmarks Commission is kind of an indication that they're trying to sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. So
Good point.
Be cautious.
Yeah, we do not have a list of approved certified contractors. Commissioner Ginsburg?
I agree. I would say with the staff works that a fence should not necessarily totally mimic the one existing historic fence, but should be simpler like some of the others in the block. But I think it's appropriate.
Okay. Commissioner Chen?
Equitable all the comments.
Vice Chair Bland?
Yeah, work with staff to get that little fence right.
Okay. Commissioner Lutfi?
I agree with everything that the applicant, the other commissioners have said. But I just want to say one other thing. You know, Lafayette Avenue is a very, very important avenue in the Fort Greene and Clinton Hill community. I mean, it's an important throughway from a walking standpoint. It's punctuated with important amenities, and I think it's really important, and I'm glad you tried to do the right thing, even though you didn't come to us, which, you know, you said you own other properties. I'm sure you know the rules. So I would like to encourage you to continue to do the right thing and to put a fence up, because we want to continue to think about the landscape of these two important neighborhoods in this very important building, borough. And I think in doing that, you want to do something that is harmonious with the architecture of the building and what's around it. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Yes, I agree with all my previous commissioners' comments.
All righty. Commissioner Master?
I agree with all the other comments.
Okay. Commissioner Jefferson?
I agree with all the comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Holford?
Agreed.
All right. Commissioner Chapin, I think we're all in agreement to approve this with the modification that they work with the staff on the design and details of the fence.
Okay, thank you. The matter of certificate of appropriateness, Borough of Brooklyn, LPC 1933-252-302 Lafayette Avenue, Clinton Hill Historic District, an Italianate style row house designed by John S. King and William Vance and built in circa 1873. Application is to legalize repaving the areaway and installing an areaway wall without permits and to install a new railing. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Clinton Hill Historic District. I also note that the historic Italianate style areaway fencing was removed from many of the buildings in this row, including at this building, prior to the designation of the historic district. I recommend approval with modifications, finding that the repaving of the areaway and installation of the areaway wall did not alter, damage, or eliminate any significant architectural features of the building or site. That the areaway paving featuring dark gray and red bricks is in keeping with the variety of areaway paving materials found at buildings within the row and throughout the streetscape in terms of material and color palette, thereby remaining a discrete presence as seen from the sidewalk. And that areaway barriers on this block vary and have been modified over time to include low bronze stone, stucco areaway walls, metal fences, and a combination of low areaway walls with railings. Therefore, the proposed low railing above the areaway wall will not call attention to itself within the streetscape. However, I find that the design of the proposed railing is not in keeping with the picket design of the other ironwork found within the streetscape. And therefore, I recommend that the design of the proposed railing be worked on with the staff to develop an appropriate railing for the top of the areaway wall.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, would you second that motion?
Second.
Mark, will you call the vote?
Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland. Aye. Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu. Aye. Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum. Aye. Commissioner Jefferson. Aye. Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Master.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 11 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
All right, so that's approved. Please continue to work with the staff and we'll move to the next item.
Right, the next item is public hearing item number 4, LPC 24-04099, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 5035, lot 27, 168 Midwood Street in the Prospect Leopards Gardens Historic District. This is a Romanesque revival style row house designed by George Lawton and built in 1899. The application is to alter window openings.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Marie Hoge. I'm owner with my husband of 168 Midwood Street. So just thank you so much for hearing our application today. My husband and I have lived in Prospect Leopards Gardens in this house for just 10 years. We just had our 10-year anniversary in the house. We really love the neighborhood and the feeling and the character, and all of the things that make Brooklyn and PLG really special are near and dear for our hearts. We had our second child at the house 8 years ago, and it has a lot of value and just sentiment and meaning to us. So like a lot of families, we considered moving during the pandemic. We decided this is where we want to be and really looked at how do we make our house livable so we can stay here, forever and continue to meet the current and future needs of our family. So what we're asking for today is a modification that would, again, just help us make the house a little bit more livable for us. And we, we feel very lucky to live in the manor, and we feel like we're really holding this house for this generation. And we do really strive to maintain the historic nature of it. One of the first improvements that we made on the home when we were able was to remedy a violation that we inherited when we bought it, which was to replace our front windows, make sure they were the right color. We worked with Landmarks. They're wood clad or ironclad wood in the front. So we really worked, we looked at the old photos of the house and did everything we could to maintain the look and feel. So again, I just want to emphasize, we really appreciate and support the historic feeling and want to maintain it. And we hope that this adjustment is in service to that. And again, in making the house livable for us to stay. And then I wanted to share, before I turn it over to Michael Hansen, our architect, that we did have a positive response from the community board, including there was a member at our committee meeting hearing who's a member of the Lefferts Manor Association, and she shared photos of our work with the association. So this is not a formal statement from the association, but there was a positive support. And she shared that board members discussed that there was general agreement that this was okay because it was in the back of your house. What we're proposing is in the back of our house. So wouldn't affect what those who are visiting will see. So I'm going to stop there and leave the more specific architectural details to Michael, but thank you again for hearing us. And of course, I'm available for any questions.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Hansen from Hansen Architecture, Marie and Kyle's architect. So we're talking about 168 Midwood Street. It's a 2-story plus a basement home, a small home, and it's a single family. There's no rental apartment or anything there. As Marie pointed out, the owners are a family of 4, and the proposed changes to the home that you can see down on the lower level, the lower part of the page here, is relatively straightforward, but it makes a huge impact in terms of their living as a family of 4. I want to point out again that part of the issue here is that in this neighborhood, that it is a relatively low grouping of houses where it's 2 stories plus a basement as opposed to the usual 3 stories plus a basement, which might have offered more flexibility. Marie and Kyle came to me specifically asking for a certain number of things that they wanted to make the home better for their family, but with the concern that not only we have to deal with landmarks rules, but we want this to be consistent with the fabric and with the nature of nature of the neighborhood and the home. So the neighborhood is relatively uniform, as you can see. They're all lower lying. They are all similar with a series of variations that sort of create a rhythm, as is typical throughout most of our historic neighborhoods here. And in the rear of the block, of course, you see more of these variations. For instance, our house here at number 4, it has a bay in the rear, and there's no addition below. Neighbors next have an addition below, no bay, or in some cases both, in some cases neither. And then some of the variations in the more recent renovations, of course, on the garden level have become a little more charactered, a little more different, a little more modern, of course, because they're dealing with the lower levels here. The proposal that we're making is that we would remove the central window and that we would take exactly the same windows and set them to either side. It's worth pointing out that we are maintaining the exact proportions of the existing historic windows. And in fact, we're using the same model of window that was approved in the work that Marie mentioned before by LPC in terms of replacing them and bringing them up to standard. We want to maintain the bay. Didn't want to affect that. We want to only change this upper level, which we realize is a significant piece. In the neighborhood, there are some other variations that happen that are of a similar nature. And I only point that out to say that a few doors down, the rhythm of the top floor windows has already been broken, and that the variation would just serve to create a little bit more of the texture that we generally see in these areas where things change and move depending on the livability and how the owners need to work on their homes in order to live and stay there. Really, the only change that we're looking at is that top floor. And again, we're working diligently to maintain the proportions, the type, and in fact, we'll match the color that was already, of course, approved last time around. And we're keeping the existing windows to either side, and we're maintaining that rhythm there. And my feeling as an architect and a professional faced with a number of different options as to how to make this happen for them, this felt to be the most appropriate in terms of knowing that we are deviating a bit from the traditional method of this, but being true to the intent of the building and the proportions of how it's used and how the windows open. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? So, and just, you did say a few doors down, the rhythm is broken. Is that by that full height rear extension that was in the photograph? Okay, but otherwise there's a pattern.
Consistent at the top level.
Okay. Let me see. Let's move to public testimony, and I'll note that there is no one in the hearing room, so I'll turn it straight to Gregory to see if we have any remote participants.
Thank you, Chair Carroll. We have one attendee with their hand raised, that being Christina Conroy from the Victorian Society of New York. So Christina Conroy, I'm promoting you to panelist right now. Please unmute your line and state your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so good afternoon, commissioners. I am Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. The Victorian Society supports this proposal, even though it violates what we believe is a good policy of retaining at least the top floor rear facades in their original configuration. In this case, the beautiful historic oriel window at the second floor so dominates this facade that we think the top floor alteration will have a minimal effect. The retention of the 2 outer windows at the top floor also helps to minimize the disruption to the rhythm of the fenestration. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I'm looking through the attendees list now, and I do not see any further hands raised. So I will note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 9 recommends approval, and I will bring it back to you, Chair Carroll.
Okay, so you have supportive testimony. I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add at this point.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that across the street, there are houses that have 4 windows in the back. And there may be some on our side closer down, but that's to say that it's not that the houses in the manor are not all exactly the same. So there are some that have 3 windows and some that historically have 4. And then I also wanted to clarify what I said about the Leopards Manor Association. That wasn't an official statement. That was informal neighbor discussion.
Yeah.
So I just didn't want to misrepresent the LMA's statement. That was informal neighborly discussion. So I just didn't want to misconstrue that, but that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, let's make a motion to close the hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Holford Smith, would you second that motion? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed, and I want to thank the applicant. I think you were sensitive to the issues and you got right to the point. So thank you for that. And so, as you know, the staff is not authorized to approve modifying window openings at the top floor of row houses because it is often a place where the commission likes to retain some consistency within the row. So the applicant has addressed that, and I think that they've made a couple of points. One, that within the Prospect Lefferts Manor, there are buildings that have a 4-bay rhythm on the rear and some that have 3 bays. In this block, there is a pretty consistent treatment of 3 bays, but the applicant pointed out that it is disrupted by a full height addition in the row. And we heard testimony that supported it, commenting that the bay window is really here a unifying and significant feature. So these are all things that one could think about as you evaluate this application. Commissioner Jefferson, would you like to start this one?
Sure. This is a very simple one for me. I can approve it.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Holford Smith.
So I've been looking at starting the elevation, the rear elevation and the placement of the windows, and I certainly understand the trying to divide the upper floor into two equal bedrooms, but I find that the one window on that overhangs half the bay is really kind of odd. I wonder if they could sort of do a pair of windows in the center that would separated by the partition that would maybe put the windows more above the bay rather than have this spacing. But I think if there's general consensus that this spacing is okay, I think that the testimony that noted that the bay is sort of the dominant feature persuaded me that the top floor is less important in this case.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chapin?
Yeah, I when I was looking at that myself, I thought it was the same thing as the testimony that the bays are a very dominant feature, and although we try to preserve the upper floors, that perhaps in this case it was not quite as important.
Okay.
And also there's a full height addition next there, which interrupts the row. I do think that Commissioner Holford Smith's suggestion has a lot of merit, and I would certainly support that if other commissioners, if we have a consensus for that as opposed to the current proposal.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
I think Ann's idea is a good idea.
All right, Commissioner Ginsburg?
I agree. I think that probably better grouped has been proposed, but I think the plan makes a lot of sense, and the bay is a strong element.
Okay, Commissioner Chen?
Sort of in agreement.
Okay, Commissioner Bland?
I can support it as is.
Commissioner Lutfi?
I could support it as is, but I would be fine with joining the windows with the mountain. However, I'm not convinced that they need to be moved to the center because these roofs are not that wide. And I think it would throw the rooms off. I really appreciate what you're trying to accomplish. These are small, beautiful, they're like jewels, these buildings. And, but it's not easy to do what you do. And I appreciate, your desire to protect the building as much as possible.
Okay, Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I can approve it as it is, as proposed. My only concern with making a center is if it becomes a bigger window because it's being split by a wall. I think that may bring too much attention to it and detract from the nice moment, which is really the projected bay piece below it.
Okay, Commissioner Master?
I agree with a lot of the comments. I can actually support this as is as well.
Okay. All right, so I think we have enough to support this as is. I do appreciate your suggestion in trying to think about those relationships and the applicant can certainly think about that some more, but I think we have enough to support it as is. So I'll go ahead and make this motion. All right, in the matter of docket number 2404099168 Midwood Street in the Prospect Lefferts Gardens Historic District, a Romanesque revival style row house designed by George Lawton and built in 1899. This is an application to alter window openings, and I note that the building style, scale, material, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Prospect Lefferts Gardens Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not be visible from a public thoroughfare, that the reconfiguration of the top floor openings from 3 to 4 openings will maintain the outer openings and match the existing size of openings with masonry between the windows, and will otherwise align with and remain harmonious with the fenestration found at other houses in the row, and that the work will not detract from the special historic and architectural character of the house and the Prospect Lefferts Gardens Historic District. All right, Vice Chair Bland, would you second that motion?
Second. Chair Carroll.
Aye.
Commissioner Bland. Aye. Commissioner Chapin.
Aye.
Commissioner Chen.
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lutfi.
Aye.
Commissioner Master.
Aye.
Commissioner Holford Smith.
Aye.
With 11 in favor and unopposed, the motion passes.
All right, so that's approved. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, we're going to break for lunch now. We will resume at 1:20. So we will ask everyone in the public hearing to leave, and we will in the hearing room to leave, and we will ask all remote participants to voluntarily exit the Zoom meeting at this time, so that should you wish to, you don't experience any technical difficulties that might arise if we remove you ourselves.